Real quick, before we start this podcast episode, I just want to say thank you for tuning into the Marc podcast. I know you've got a million things that you could be doing right now, and the fact that you're taking time out of your day to watch this podcast episode truly means the world to me, and I just want to say thank you for that. If you'd like to continue to support the podcast, right below this video, if you could hit the subscribe button, and then, hey, if you got some more time and you want to hit the download button, the comment button, the like button, the share button, any of those buttons, it's greatly, greatly appreciated. It helps for other people to find out about the podcast, and it helps for you to be notified about future episodes. So if you guys could take a quick second, hit the subscribe button, I would really appreciate that. Outside of that, this episode and every other episode is brought to you guys by Roast Umber Coffee. As some of you guys know, I co-founded Roast Umber Coffee, and we have the greatest farmers in Guatemala and Honduras and the greatest roaster in Grand Rapids, Michigan, all to bring you guys the greatest cup of coffee possible. So if you'd like to try it out, go to our website, use the coupon code MARC30, and you're going to get 30% off your coffee. Now on to the episode. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Welcome to the Marc Podcast.
Let's go.
How we doing, brother?
I'm good, brother. Super glad to be here.
Dude, I have been looking forward to this podcast episode since I came into NFTs in early 2020 or mid 2021. So, dude, I've been waiting on this for a minute. So, how's it going, bro? Welcome to the podcast.
Dude, thank you. Thank you for having me. Super stoked to be in LA, and yeah, just glad to be here.
We're going to have some good times this week. But dude, for people who don't know who you are, can you give a brief intro to yourself?
Yeah, my name is Michael. People on the internet know me as Fxnction, and I have built a following and gotten a lot of attention around NFTs and my perspective on them, as well as like a lot of dick jokes and other fun stuff.
Oh, you make dick jokes? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I'm kind of the not inventor, but the instigator of dick jokes in the crypto Twitter realm, I would say.
You've truly made some incredible dick jokes over the years. It's been fun to watch. But so for some people who have watched my podcast before, typically I interview project founders. We talk about why they started their project, their whole life journey and everything, and where they're taking the project. Today's episode, we leave these kind of conversations open-ended. I have my questions, but who knows how many of them I'm actually going to ask. We're just going to dive into the whole life of Fxnction. We're going to dive into, why you got into the NFT space to begin with, what you were doing before that, what you've learned from it. We're going to dive into all of it. So let's start with, what were you doing before getting into NFTs? How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
31.
31, okay. So what were you doing with your life? What was like 18-year-old Fxnction like, and what were you planning on doing with your life? Kind of walk me through that.
Yeah, definitely. So 18-year-old Fxnction was in college. I was starting to, when I went to college, it was kind of like my first separation from my family. I'd spent like summer camps and stuff throughout high school and middle school away from them, but had never like created I'd never had an experience of actual individuation, something where I can start to become my own individual. And so college was my very first experience of that. And going into college, I was very, very good at golf. I thought I'd maybe potentially play at the University of Arizona. I might play D1 golf. Had a couple people talking to me about potentially joining the team. And my parents kind of had a vision for me of either A, like I become this golfer, which is an idea that I had always had ever since I was like 6 or 7 years old. I was always very, very competitive. Or to essentially go into like just the real world and get a job. Something that would be in the business world, but have like very, very stable income, very, very secure, like a lot of security, be able to have like a white picket fence and a family and all of this other stuff. And when I got into college, I started to obviously experiment with partying and a lot of other things, and also started to create an individuation for myself where I realized that wasn't what I wanted. And so when I was like 18, 19, that's when I really started to create my own businesses. Most of them were just like random ideas that I had, complete failures, completely went into the fucking ground. But it was the first phase of me saying, wow, I can actually formulate a vision in my head of what I want my life to be like. And based upon specific actions that I take, I can actually create that into reality. And that was kind of the very, very beginning phases for me, was diving a little bit deeper into myself and understanding there was a lot more complexity inside myself than I had ever previously imagined. And I also had a lot more things that I wanted to do with my life that weren't necessarily based off my parents' vision for me.
Totally fair. Totally fair. Yeah, I don't think my parents thought I'd be talking about NFTs on a podcast for a living. So, hey, we don't always, perfectly result in what our parents thought we were going to be. But hey, it's neither here nor there. So let's go into, okay, so you thought that you might potentially go into golf. You might, start up one of these businesses. One of them might take off. So let's talk about what did you end up doing after college, and like, what was your first, I guess, success that you started to have after college?
I would say, while it wasn't like a very large financial success, it was the first experience of a success that I had. It was actually in college. So I went to college at the University of Arizona. I only spent about 3.5 years there because I was making so many different ideas, and I realized, like, if I stay here, I'm going to get sucked into the partying scene, and I'm going to be here for 5 or 6 years. And I had such a big vision for myself that I said, like, it's time to start to individuate to a different degree, even from my peers. And when I went on my third year, essentially, instead of doing the normal summer routine and go off and do whatever I wanted to do, I actually spent the summer in India in my last year. It was a study abroad program that my school offered. And so I went out to India. I actually learned a lot about meditation and yoga and all these different things there. And in India, I actually created this idea for a mobile app. It was called Sociallink. And it was a social app that would allow you to, like, if you and I were meeting right now, we could pull up the app, our phones would connect, and we'd be friends on all social networks with the click of one button. And I was so passionate about it. Like, I thought it was the idea, and it was technically my first success in my eyes. It didn't sell for millions. It didn't have hundreds of thousands of users, but we got up to like 15,000 users. And to me, while I was still in college trying to build this idea out, learning how to actually manage a development team in India that was on the opposite side of the world after I had returned, and starting to experience how to work with other people, I had 2 other business partners on it, was extremely challenging, extremely enlightening, and like a very, very, very intense growth process. Well, most of my friends were just like, yo, let's go party. It's fucking Friday night. Like, let's go get wasted. Most of my nights were spent in my room, smoking weed and just sitting on my computer, ideating ways to like get more creative, to get better marketing, to build up the product itself to be a better iteration of itself. And so I came back from India with this idea. I had already met a development team, and I went to my parents and I said, hey guys, like, I'm doing this instead of the traditional realm. Like, I no longer want to go to Deloitte. I no longer want to be this business consultant that you guys want me to be. What I want to do is I want to be an entrepreneur. And this is like very like early days, this was like when Gary Vee was just starting to talk about entrepreneurship. My parents were like, what's an entrepreneur? We don't even know what that means. And as I started to explain it to them, they're like, you're crazy. And I told them to their faces. I remember specifically, we were driving home from the airport where they picked me up at LAX when I just gotten back from India. And I asked them, I was like, I need $5,000 to make this idea a reality. Can I have $5,000 to do that? And they're like, no, like, there's no way you're going to be able to do this. You need to focus on school. You need to get good grades so that you can go do the fucking ABC and get your job. And I told them to their face, I said, Mom, Dad, if you don't give me the $5,000, I'm going to go get the $5,000 somewhere else. And I'm going to fucking do this. And I'm going to make this company, and I'm going to make it a reality because I really believe in the vision that I have for this. And eventually they were like, okay, cool. You know what? Like, my parents are very supportive. I don't want to portray them that they're not. They're extremely supportive. They were a little resistant to my crazy out there ideas in the beginning, but overall they're very, very supportive and loving individuals. And so eventually they said, yeah, here's $5,000. Figure it out. Like, good luck. And so I took the $5,000. I managed the development team in India from across the world. I was up like in college, like every single night talking to these guys at 2 or 3 a.m., telling them how I wanted it to work, building wireframes, sketching it out on paper, testing the app, doing all of this different stuff. While most of the people in my like school or class or grade were all just out partying, having a fun time. And this was like, for me, the very beginning of there's a greater possibility. Because when that app came to life, when it actually got on the App Store, after all the hurdles and all the failures and all the things that really blocked me from getting there, once it was on the App Store and people were using it at my school, it was the coolest feeling ever. Like, it made me feel alive to like a different degree than anything else had ever made me feel alive. And while the app didn't necessarily quote unquote succeed, it didn't get to millions and millions of people, it didn't blow up or anything like that. We got 15,000 users, and to me, that was a success. I was happy. We ended up selling the app. We ended up selling the app for a couple grand to some guy who was in New York who wanted a project for his son to try to be an entrepreneur. And I had kind of begun to transition. I think we'd worked on it for about a year or two, and I had begun to transition into a new phase in my life, where I was like a lot more spiritual and a lot more interacting with myself at a deeper degree, because I realized that while I had gone through this process of building this mobile app, there were also like emotional barriers inside of me that were limiting me from like actually accepting my full potential and being able to encompass my full potential. And so that was a big process, was me letting that go. After I had gotten out of college, I decided, it's time to let this go. It's time to move on. Sold the mobile app, made a couple grand, took that couple grand, and I moved to Costa Rica for 4 months.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Put all my stuff in a backpack. So when you ask me what did I do after college, I spent years being what you would kind of call a vagabond, like a hippie. And so I threw all my stuff in my backpack and went to Costa Rica and just traveled, and just like allowed myself to kind of figure out what life was like without me planning it. Like, what would it be like for me to experience the moment that I'm in if I didn't actually have a plan, and if I didn't actually have something structured that my mind like had created and thought for me. And that was my first experience of like really letting go to a deep degree.
Damn. Okay, so let's walk through real quick. Where were you born?
Redwood City, California.
Okay, so you go from California to Arizona to India to Costa Rica. Am I right on that, or were there some other pit stops along the way?
You're mostly right on that. Yeah, I spent the majority of my childhood in Northern California. Born in Redwood City, but raised in a small town called Scotts Valley, right outside of Santa Cruz. So lived kind of the skater life growing up a little bit. I wasn't like fully into that culture, but all my friends were skateboarding and we played video games, and I was very into sports. Like, I was every sport you could imagine. Football, or I actually didn't play football. That was the only one I didn't do, but golf was huge for me. Basketball was huge for me. I was very good at baseball as well. And then, I spent 2 years of the very beginning of my high school in a town called Monterey. And then I moved to San Diego. So lived in Southern California for a while, went to college in Arizona, did the Costa Rica travels, and also did a little bit of Thailand in the same time zone. And that was kind of like the beginning iterations of my existence.
There we go. So what was Costa Rica like? So you go there, you're kind of like, okay, I want to find myself, essentially. I want to go out there. I want to like experience, kind of what it's like to not have the typical like societal restraints on my life. I want to just come out there. And what were you doing? What was the day-to-day like?
Well, Costa Rica was really interesting because my first experience in Costa Rica was when I was still actually running the mobile app.
Okay.
I got invited by a guy named Matt who ran, it was called Under 30 CEO. And it was a whole a company that he had created, and he created a side company called Under 30 Experiences. And he would bring entrepreneurs that were under 30 years old, bring them together in unique locations, and bring them through experiences. Pretty simple. And so I decided, he invited me one day. He's like, I want you to come to this trip in Costa Rica with us and spend a week in Costa Rica. And when I went there, we were at a eco lodge resort, like literally in the middle of the fucking jungle, right next to Lake Arenal. There's a giant volcano down there. It was, I forgot what they call it. I think they call it Wave 3 or Phase 3 of the jungle. So it's like the deep part of the jungle. And I was in love with it. It was absolutely gorgeous. There's very little Wi-Fi, almost no technology. It's technically a honeymoon resort, so people could just like stay there for their honeymoons and get away from the world. But when I was there, I just connected with nature and with the experience of having like almost nothing to a deep degree over that week. And I was just like, this is awesome. And I kept seeing these people walking around the resort that didn't look like they belonged to the resort. And so I started to make friends with them. They were just like real hippie guys. And it turns out they had a volunteer program. And so you could go there, you could volunteer, and you could help build the eco resort. So all the food was grown there. They didn't outsource anything. I think the only thing they outsourced was rice and beans. And so all these volunteers were taking care of the land all day, and they were helping grow the food. They were helping harvest it. They were doing all the basic shit that you would need to do in order to keep a resort thriving and alive, as well as feed everyone at the resort. And as soon as I learned about that program, like, something in my mind was like, I need to sell my business and I need to do this, you know? And so that was my first month there. I had a little bit of a plan. I had to send an application in. They said, okay, come, you can see how long we're like willing to have you stay, but here it is, like, come join us. And so I stayed there on that ranch for 30 days. I actually got kicked off the ranch.
What'd you do to get kicked off the ranch?
I mean, they said I was smoking too many cigarettes and drinking too much coffee and getting too wasted, but I don't claim that to be true. I think I was smoking an equal amount of cigarettes as everyone else.
What about the getting wasted?
Oh, we were definitely getting wasted. We were having a good time, but everybody was, so it was all good.
Were you guys doing ayahuasca or anything else like that out there?
Not out there, no.
Okay.
Not in that.
Not yet.
Not yet. No, that's a whole other story. But when I was out there, it was 30 days of actually connecting with nature to a really large degree and doing physical labor. Like, to be honest, like, I grew up pretty, like, well taken care of. My parents aren't crazy off rich. I couldn't just, like, call my butler and have food, but we weren't also, like, struggling, you know? So I was able to like grow up in a pretty comfortable home. And I'd never really done a bunch of physical labor beyond like maybe helping my mom in the garden every once in a while. And so that was my first experience of actually putting in time and energy in order to create the food that I needed to have on the table. You know, it was my first experience beyond like working Jamba Juice when I was 16 to be able to have a quote unquote job that I had to take care of things, that I had responsibilities. And I just remember being out there. There was a whole group of other volunteers out there with me. And it was a really, really cool connective experience because all of a sudden I'm learning about how to take care of plants. I'm learning how to actually plant food and grow food and harvest food. I'm learning how to take care of cows, shoveling cow shit, you know, stuff that like a normal person doesn't necessarily go through, especially in America. And it was very awakening and also very, very much out of my comfort zone because there was the eco resort, and then about 2 miles away, there was a little town, and not like a town where like people come in and out of, like an actual Costa Rican town where it's only locals. There's one store, one grocery store, or like little bodega, you know, and we would walk every single night. We'd walk all the way the 2 miles there and all the way the 2 miles back. And you're in the middle of a jungle. Like, it's not like you're walking on a paved road. No, you're walking on dirt. There's snakes everywhere. There's giant cobras and shit. I mean, I don't know if cobras exist in Costa Rica, so don't quote me that. But, you know, like there's actual venomous snakes that can fucking kill you if they bite you, especially if you're 2 miles away from any source of anti-venom. And so a lot of my experience was just being so far outside of my comfort zone and just feeling into that as much as possible so that I didn't feel as uncomfortable the more and the more I did it. And it was really exciting. Like, it was really exhilarating. You know, we'd walk 2 miles. We'd drink these little, I forgot what they were called, but they were rum and cokes in a can. We drink like 4 of them, six of them, smoke a bunch of cigarettes, talk with the locals, make some banter, and we just stumble home, you know, every single night. And we'd be in this environment where, that I had never been in before. And I think that was like really the big thing for me, was just like constantly pushing my comfort zone, especially in my like early 20s. To see what I was really made of and like what set me apart from other people.
So how long did you end up staying there?
On that resort, I stayed 30 days.
But in actuality, the entire trip in Costa Rica?
I believe it was 3 or 4 months total.
Okay.
Yeah, so after the 30 days, they sat me down. They're like, you smoke too many cigarettes, you drink too many coffees, you take too many breaks. You're not as valuable here as you think you are. And this was a shock to my ego. I was all pissed, you know. And they're like, oh, we'll order you a cab. I'm like, nah, fuck that. I threw my backpack on and I just started walking. Just left the whole resort. And as I did that, it was, honestly, looking back at it, I was frustrated, but it was really, really a massive blessing, because that was one of the first times where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And there's a certain level of being absolutely terrified in not knowing what you're doing. I think everybody's experienced it if you've never had a plan before, even if you're in a city that you don't know and you're just walking around, you don't have anything to do, and it's night or something like that. Like, it can be absolutely terrifying. So I found myself in a foreign country. Thankfully, Costa Rican's pretty Americanized, but I found myself in a foreign country miles away from any city or town, having absolutely no plan on how to get anywhere, where I was going to go, only knowing a few people, but most of them were still back at the ranch. And I just started walking. Eventually, I'm walking. Some Costa Rican lady pulls up. She's like, "You want to ride?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Hop in her car. She takes me to the nearest town. I get out there. I start walking around. I find a hostel. I pay $20. So I make some new friends. All of a sudden, they invite me to a new town. And it was just an experience for me. I found myself at one point on a beach town in the middle of nowhere, actually stringing my hammock in a abandoned hostel. We woke up the next morning at like 2 a.m. because there was a fucking 150 monkeys that actually lived there and had just returned home, and we're all screaming that we were there. So it's just this constant experience of, I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm going to constantly lean into the unknown rather than taking the traditional path that I had viewed a lot of my friends in college taking, and a lot of the people in my life taking, even my mom and my dad. I just kind of viewed that they'd taken the comfortable path. They'd taken this path that was known to them, like they knew it was going to happen. And I didn't want that. So I just kept doing what I needed to do to lean into the unknown and to feel my way through it and to do my best just to not be afraid and just trust God that I was on the right path.
I love that, man. It's cool. I always feel like there's no like perfect path for everybody, right? It's like we all got to go on our own way. And when we talked about earlier, like our parents' reaction to some of the stuff we've done, like, I was running a nightclub at 16 years old, right? And so I had to have a letter from my parents basically saying that I was allowed to come home past curfew, because when you're 16, you can't drive. I think in Michigan, it's like you can't drive past like 11 p.m. or something along those lines. I don't know how much they actually enforce that, but it's a thing there. So I had to have this paperwork from my parents saying I could come home at like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning as a 16-year-old, right? Coming home from work. And now I think about it as a 30-year-old. I'm like, man, I can't imagine having a kid and like having to wait, because my mom would wait up every single night for me to get home. And it was like, and I think about how much anxiety that probably caused her. But at the same time, it's like, I knew I was never going to work for anybody in my life. I knew I was always going to be my own boss. And so I was my own boss from 13 years old to, what I'm at now, 30. And so it's like, going that way and sometimes you make a decision and it works out really well for you. Sometimes it blows up in your face. Sometimes you have a business idea that makes you a lot of money. Sometimes you have a business idea that makes you lose a shit ton of money, but you learn from everything. So talk to me about what caused you to then eventually leave Costa Rica.
I was running out of money.
Great reason.
Yeah. I was like, I had done enough. I think I had stretched my comfort zone enough, experienced a lot of different things. And then finally I pretty much just ran out of money and was like, it's time to come home, and so moved back to my parents' house for a little while, lived there. And still was trying to figure out what the fuck I wanted to do with my life, to be honest with you. I think I was still like 20, maybe even just 21, 22, something like that. And yeah, once I got home, I started to dive deeper into like the spiritual culture. I was living in San Diego at the time. That's where my family lived. And if anybody's from San Diego, they've got a good little hippie community down there. And it's like cool because a lot of the quote unquote hippies that I'm talking about are actually really successful entrepreneurs as well. So it wasn't like I was just like some random dude, vagabond sitting on the fucking side of the street all day. No, I was like talking a lot of deep spiritual concepts with people, but I was also talking about deep spiritual concepts with entrepreneurs who were much more successful than me. And I knew that there was an integration of my spiritual side and my entrepreneurial side that I wanted. Like I knew that like while I was diving deep into like my heart and understanding more of who I was as a person, I wasn't necessarily only going to take that path. Like I still knew that I wanted to be a very successful individual. I knew I wanted to build companies, but I just knew it wasn't the traditional path of like hustling. I knew I wasn't going to just sit there all day at a desk grinding. I knew there had to be a better way that could actually integrate my life and have all the parts and all the aspects feel whole rather than cutting all these other, like I think a lot of people when you hustle, you're just cutting off all these parts of your life, like tunnel focused and tunnel vision, and a lot of the times it can work, but a lot of the times you also miss a ton of signs and a ton of opportunities because you're so tunnel vision. And so I kind of wanted to take a new perspective to it, and I kind of wanted to sit and say, like, how can I integrate all of that with myself? And through that, I just got really connected in the spiritual community in San Diego, met a lot of really good friends, and it set me on like a very, very deep and intimate journey that I'm stoked to chat. I'm happy to chat with you about, but I also haven't like talked too much about it on any public podcast, so it's going to be interesting for me to kind of formulate it. But it sent me on a journey that is the reason I am who I am today. Like, it is the reason why I've shaped myself this way, and how I continue to shape myself, and how I continue to formulate myself.
Yeah, I mean, let's dive into all of it. So, okay, so one of the things that obviously people see right when they see you is tattoos and whatnot, right? Have you always been, like, when did you first start getting tattoos? Was that part of, like, I feel like for a lot of people, they have, like, deeper meaning and everything like that. Was that part of, like, the spiritual journey, was also experimenting with, like, tattoos and things like that? Or are there no ties at all to those, and I'm just kind of putting that together?
A little bit. It's actually far after the spiritual side of my journey that I started getting tattoos.
Okay, so we'll dive into that then afterwards. So let's dive into the spiritual aspect of things. So, yeah, tell me more about that. Whatever you feel comfortable talking about.
Totally. I mean, as I was continuing to get integrated into the spiritual community, I started to make some really good friends. You know, some people that had very successful businesses, who were working with other very successful entrepreneurs that were much older than them. And these guys were all my age. And one day, shout out to Dimitri, one day this guy named Dimitri, he was running a conference in Boulder, Colorado. And he said, I want you to come out. It was hosted by, I forgot the guy's name, but he's a very successful entrepreneur in the Web2 entrepreneurial like world, internet marketing world, you know. And I said, sure, why not? I'll come out. But I don't have any money, bro. Like I was broke. I was like, I don't have any money to afford it. He's like, look, if you can figure out how to get a plane ticket there and back, I'll pay for your ticket to the event, and I'll make sure you're like up and hosted in some sort of location. Like, we have a group house. I'll make sure you have one of the rooms in the house. I said, I can't say no to that, you know? So scrounged up a last of my money, definitely given to me by my parents, you know. I think I was 22 at this point, and took the journey out there, and that was like the moment that things really started to change for me. I was outside the event one day, and I saw this woman, and she was much older, but I saw her, and I like instantly was like, who the fuck is that? You know what I mean?
And it was Lisa Ann.
I don't know who that is, but no.
You don't know who Lisa Ann is?
No, who's Lisa
you're
Ann?
going to get a few comments about that after this podcast comes out. One of I would say, the greatest porn star of all time, in my opinion. I'm going to give her that title. But she's an older woman. But okay. Nice. So you meet this older woman. Tell me about that. I write about that a little bit. You got to tell me about this.
Yeah, I mean, I met this older woman, and the only way that I can describe it was that, like, my heart felt and my body felt something different than it ever felt before in my entire life. You know, you could call it like a soul connection or whatever was like words you want to put on it, but the only way I can describe to it was, I was like, who the fuck is this woman, and why the hell am I so attracted to her? You know? And so she was 18 years older than me at that point. I was 22. I was probably 23. She was 41, I think. 22, something like that, something in that realm. She was very successful. She had 2 businesses. She had some kids and all this other stuff. And she's also very beautiful. And while I had like childish love before, you know, like more of like an infatuation love, like through college and high school, you know, when you're like, oh, I love this girl. Yeah. This was like the first time that I think, like, beyond being in love with golf, I was very in love with golf. I was very in love with being an entrepreneur and building companies. But this was the first time I had actually been in love, like, deeply with another human. And yeah, I just pursued her, bro. I was this 22, 23-year-old kid pursuing this 41, 42-year-old woman. And she had no idea what the fuck was going on. She was like, why do you like me? Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And I just wouldn't give up on it. You know what I mean? And just kept texting her after we met, and I was still living with my parents, and we do FaceTimes and all of this other stuff, and it was just evident to me that like there was something so deep here that I had to dive in. I had to explore it. We did a bunch of journeys together and a bunch of other like deep spiritual stuff together, and eventually like I found myself moving to Colorado for her. And that was the first reason I actually moved to Colorado. Yeah. Was because I was so in love with her, and I was like, all right, cool. And she's like, you can move here, but you can't live with me. And I was like, all right, that's fine. Figure it out. Threw all my shit in my car, drove to Colorado. First night there, like some big shit happens, but I held it down. So she's like, all right, you can live with me. And so I ended up living with her for probably 8 or 9 months. And
were you guys like intimate at this point in time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm probably speeding up the story a little bit, but yeah, we'd been intimate, and she was very into polyamory.
Okay.
And I wasn't at all. Like that wasn't my thing. I was much more like, yo, I'm a monogamous dude. Like I like having my attention with one female. That's how I am. I think mostly because of my Christian upbringing. You know what I mean? I'm born and raised Catholic in Catholicism, and it was a intense experience because of the clashing of worlds. I think part of me was probably like subtly and unconsciously controlling of trying to make her monogamous. And part of her was also controlling of trying to hold herself as polyamorous. And while she didn't like fuck anybody while we were together, for like the majority of our relationship till the very end, it was still very challenging. You know, I was still always having to figure out how do I navigate with a woman who's constantly attracted to other men as well. Like, how do I navigate with a woman who doesn't see the king that I am, you know, and doesn't see the things that I'm holding down, and doesn't see the things that I'm putting out in the world, and doesn't see the light of my heart to the degree that I can experience it? Because I don't want to say she didn't see it at all. I think she did. But through that, it really formulated me into a man, to be honest with you. And I'm still learning a lot of like, still like piecing a lot of that together because it was a very intense experience. But like, and it took me a very long time to do so afterwards. But before that relationship, I was a boy, and coming out of that relationship, I learned how to be a man, essentially. And so yeah, we dated for a year total. I lived with her for 8 months, helped her take care of her kids, helped her raise her kids, and really put everything aside that I wanted in my life because of A, how much I was in love with her, and B, to really help her remember, like to like show her that she could still feel like a family. You know what I mean? Like there was aspects that when I had joined her life and like entered into her life, that I realized that she was disconnected from the experience of family to a degree. You know, she's being very successful as an entrepreneur. She's like pretty famous online in her like internet marketing community and all of this stuff. And when I observed that, I also observed like a certain level of disconnection from her kids and from her friends and just existing. And like through that relationship, I learned to be a man, and she also learned a lot about remembering how to like connect with her kid again. Like she attributes a lot of like our relationship to helping her like really become friends with her daughter and connect with her daughter, which is something I'm really grateful for. But yeah, honestly, by the end of the relationship, she cheated on me, and it absolutely destroyed me. Not just that. I think it was a combination of a lot of different things and a lot of intense experiences that I put myself through and made the full conscious choice to. But through that experience of actually being destroyed by a woman, I learned like a shit ton about life.
What were some of your biggest takeaways from all of this? Because the way that I think about it is like, I feel like when you're under the age of like 25, like you don't know who you are yet. Like you're still figuring it out, because up until the age of probably like 21, you just pretty much say yes to whatever your friends want to do, right? Like, hey, we're going to do this. Do you want to come? Sure. And you kind of feel like you're obligated to, right? And so a lot of our experiences that we have are shared experiences with a lot of our like best friends and whatnot, because of kind of like the societal pressure to kind of just do what everybody else is doing, right? And so then as you get older, you start to actually say to yourself, nah, I really don't want to do that. Or actually, I really want to do this. And you start to kind of say, hey, I'm going to go off to Costa Rica. I'm going to go to Colorado, and I'm going to start dating this older woman, right? And you start saying to yourself, I'm going to start doing what I want to do, regardless if the people around me want to do those things or if they're interested or whatever. So, but then obviously getting into a situation like that, and for, I'm 30 years old. Up until probably the age of like 26, I'd never really heard of polyamorous relationships or people who are kind of into that and everything like that. Moved out to LA, you see polyamory all over the place. Like it is a very, very common thing out here, right? And so thinking about, at 26, I already knew how I felt about like what I wanted in life and, who I would eventually end up marrying and stuff like that. Like I knew what I wanted, right? And so for yourself, being like at that time 22, 23 years old, you're starting to date this woman who's polyamorous, and like I don't think you're even like mentally developed enough at 23 to even know how to handle that situation, right? And then on top of that, she cheats on you, which then causes I'm sure some sort of insecurities and things like that within yourself. So how did you but you've had all these crazy experiences after coming back from Costa Rica, then living in San Diego, having, being in India, all these different experiences. And now you're 23 years old. You just got cheated on by this woman that you were in love with. So, dude, how did you come away from that? What did you take away from it? What was the positive, the negative, everything?
It's a good question because, and to start, I think like I started my like individualization early. When I was 18, 19, I knew that I wasn't like my peers, and I knew I wanted to do something bigger. So I already had like enough of individual capacity to be able to handle it to a degree. I wasn't able to fully handle it, obviously, because honestly, it destroyed me. Like emotionally, mentally, for years, I had to figure out a way to like rebuild myself, and I'm still rebuilding myself and restructuring myself into like a greater version of myself. But I think what it really did for me was show me the strength of my heart. I don't think I would have ever really known how strong and how deep like I can actually love, whether it's another person, whether it's something in my life that I'm building. I don't think I would have ever really known that if I had not pushed the limits of that relationship so deeply. It taught me a lot about myself. It taught me that I am a very pervicacious individual, very, very willful. Like when I want something, and I won't stop until it's fucking done, or till it destroys me, which is a redeeming quality as well as not in many instances and cases. But it taught me a lot about life in general as well. It taught me, when you're younger and you see a girl or you like a girl or you're in a relationship with a woman, there's some degrees that she's trying to change you, but there's also like unconscious ways that you're trying to change her. And through that relationship, I personally really learned like that I'm not going to change anyone. They can make the choice to change, to like live into like the existence that I live in. And it taught me to be more of a king in that aspect, because it really taught me that like if I'm going to like have women in my life, which I want, if I'm going to have a for lack of a better word, a kingdom that I build for myself, then I can't let a woman just come in and destroy it. I actually have to allow her to choose into it, but I can't force her into it. And I can't force her into the way that I think. And it taught me a lot about all of those different aspects of life. And it really, I think, really taught me how devastating it can be when I let a woman in really, really deep, and when I don't hold it to the highest integrity possible, and when she also doesn't hold it to the highest integrity possible. And so, yeah, to continue the story, yeah, just for years I was destroyed. I think for about a year I went back to my parents' house, just sat around smoking all day, doing absolutely nothing, like constantly spinning in my head, like no center, like no groundedness at all, not knowing what I wanted to do with my life anymore. And then for probably another 3 years after that, before I got into crypto, I just kind of wandered around. I went from job to job. I was working as a dishwasher to a line cook, and then eventually fucked around in some automotive stuff and just like learned how to I was almost rebuilding myself. And what I mean by that is like I had to relearn the basics of life after being destroyed so deeply. And I had to utilized, shout out to one of my boys. He kind of like was helping me through all of this. I had a couple of really good friends they knew how destroyed I was, so they couldn't be like right there, but they also like weren't giving up on me. And so they dropped me little things, and he told me, he's like, dude, why don't you just go get some jobs? And I'm like, oh man, I was still a young kid. And I still thought I was like the greatest entrepreneur ever, even though I hadn't had a successful venture, And he was just like, dude, like go get some jobs. I was like, dude, I'm an entrepreneur. Nah, man. Like, he's like, well, what if you just thought about it like you're learning something new when you get a job instead of like working to get a paycheck? Because like my mentality was like, if I got a job as a line cook, I'd be stuck there forever. But what he kind of helped me rephrase was, instead of thinking like you're going to get a job to make money, go get a job to learn a new skill and then get paid to learn that new skill. And so I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I got a line cook job, and I learned how to start washing dishes and actually wash my fucking dishes and take care of it. I learned how to actually cook food. I worked in a Brazilian restaurant for a while. I made feijoada, which is a big Brazilian stew. I know how to make that. I worked in a Mexican food restaurant. I learned how to make all the tacos that I love to eat, and then I spent some time working on cars, because I was like, cool, if I work on these cars, I'll figure out how to like actually take care of my own car if I really need to. I can now change the oil in my car if I really need to. I can change the wheel on it if it goes out. Things like that were just really like seem basic, but were really helpful building blocks for who I was as a person, especially at the time where my head was still spinning. I had no idea what the fuck happened. I had like fallen like out of love with a woman and been absolutely destroyed by it. Seemed like she didn't give a fuck either, and I was just kind of sitting there like, how could you not care? I'm fucking just gave like a large portion of my early 20s to like make sure that you're good and you're taken care of. And I like to believe deep down she cared, but I wasn't aware of it at the time. And that's when I found crypto.
So before we get into that, I want to just ask your advice real quick, as a man who went through a lot of emotions back then too, at a young age. If somebody's listening to this right now, let's say they had a experience that just shattered them, whatever that may be in their life, what advice would you give them, or what advice would you give your younger self on kind of how to build back after going through something like that?
Man, it's a good question. I recently had another woman that kind of shook me in the middle of this bear market. So what I've been doing personally is like taking care of myself. And what that means is like looking at all the ways that I'm not the best person I can be and being very honest, So in the middle of the bear market, and we'll get into this story later, but in the middle of the bear market, I'm just sitting around smoking all day, ordering Uber Eats, being a lazy fuck, watching 100 movies. Like, is that the man I want to be? No, I want to be a man that is taking care of his business, that is working out all the time and being fit, that's eating properly, that's cooking his own food, that's able to go to the grocery store and handle all of that stuff. And I think it takes brutal honesty. And I think when you get to a point where you're tired of destroying yourself over and beating yourself up over the past or over something someone told you or a relationship you've been through, eventually you get to a point where you're like, you know what, fuck this. Like, and this is going to seem a little bit blunt, but I've been there. So it's like, fuck this. I'm either going to die or I'm going to figure this shit the fuck out, And I don't ever advise the former. I always advise the latter, but I understand how the former feels very, very deeply. I've been in that place a few times in my life, and I very, very, very deeply understand it and have a lot of empathy for it. But when you hit rock bottom enough times, you're just eventually like, fuck this. Like, I don't want to be alive. And you either get to like take the easy way out, which is kind of the coward's way out, in my opinion, or you get to start to build. And if you are at rock bottom now and you're seeing that you're there and you're aware that you're there, then just realize you actually have a blessing. You have a completely clean slate. You have something to build on top of. And even if the ground's a little mushy or it's a little muddy and it's not the most solid thing, now you can build like solidity on top of it. Now you can start to build structures on top of it. And so what I do and what I am doing is like seeing all the different ways and the different angles of my life that I'm not proud of myself. One of the most recent quotes, and I know Andrew Tate's a very controversial individual, but I like a lot of the things he says. And one of the things he said is, I don't wake up thinking, how can I be happy today? I wake up thinking, how can I be proud of myself today? And when I started to restructure that into my life, I started to realize I'm not doing all the dumb shit that I used to do. You know, like when I would wake up, I'd be like, cool, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to need to smoke 4 spliffs and drink 20 coffees and do this and this and this and this. But really what I was doing was just continually destroying myself and continually like tearing myself down. And so I finally realized, okay, cool. I'm going to wake up and say, how can I be proud of myself? And I wake up and I say, oh, okay, well, the first thing I need to do to be proud of myself is I need to drink this glass of water that's already by my bed. And I need to go bang out 50 fucking push-ups before I even start my day. Now I live on a river, thankfully. So now I wake up, instead of doing my cold showers, I go jump in the cold fucking river. You know, I'm out of the cold river. I'm going into the steam room at the gym. I'm out of the steam room at the gym. I'm lighting up a cigarette or doing whatever I do, but I'm also on my like computer getting ready for the fucking day and starting my day off. And it's starting to feel like I'm starting to understand that it's all about figuring out how to build a structure for myself that feels good to me, but isn't prioritizing feeling good for me. It's prioritizing feeling proud of myself. And by feeling proud of myself, I naturally feel good. But when I'm only searching how to feel good, then I usually find myself falling into vices that can many times be self-destructive.
100%. I think a lot of times, you know, we're in a space where money is looked at as like the king of happiness, right? And, you know, I grew up in a pretty well-off family, and I grew up on a private golf course and stuff like that. And I remember as I got older, my mom would tell me, she'd be like, okay, she'd be like, all right, you know, Mark, you're a little bit older now. We're going to start telling you the truth about everything. I was like, all right. She's like, okay, you know that guy over there? I was like, yeah. She's like, cheats on his wife. I was like, oh, okay. She's like, you know that person over there? Alcoholic. And I was like, oh, okay. You know that person? Depressed as fuck. And I was like, damn, okay. She's starting to show me the realities of like money doesn't solve every problem, right? And so I kind of you know, realized pretty quickly, hey, like that is not the root of happiness, right? And so as I got older, I was like, you know, same thing. Like I need to do things that make me feel good. I need to do things that make me proud of myself, right? When I wash my face at night and I look myself in the mirror, am I proud of the decisions that I made that day, right? And if there is a decision that I'm not proud of, because we're human and we make mistakes, then ask yourself, okay, what can you do, A, to rectify the situation, and B, to make sure you never do that again, right? And so that's always been the mindset that I've tried to have. And so I'm a big routine guy. I wake up every day, I do a double shot of espresso. I either then go to a Pilates class, or I go for a run, or I go to the gym. I do one of those things. I come back here, I make a smoothie, I take a shower, and I get on with my day, right? Whatever I need to do. But I've laid the foundation then of a good day, right? I got the 8 hours of sleep before that. I got the, you know, espresso in to wake me up. I got my workout in. I can now go do whatever with my day, and I've already laid the foundations of a good, productive day, right? And I feel like when I've gone through the hardest moments in my life, the times where you start to go, okay, I just don't have the energy to go do those things, right? I've said to myself, no, you got to. You have to, because even though it's difficult, you will feel so much better if you go and do those things, right? And so those days, the workout hits that much harder. You know, those days that, you know, when I have that productive phone call, it makes me feel that much better, right? And so it's like the days where you absolutely don't want to do shit, those are the days where you need to do those things, because it grounds you. It brings you back to the person that you know that you are, right? So, okay, so I want to dive into now from here, crypto. So how did you dive into crypto after all this, after the heartbreak, after now getting into these different jobs that you're doing, and you're learning these different skills and everything like that? How did you end up getting red pilled into crypto?
So I had a little crypto experience when I was living back at my parents' house in between the Costa Rica journeys and stuff like that. I hadn't bought. My buddy had been mining. My buddy's buddy had been mining Bitcoin, and we utilized it in 2013 for Silk Road purchases. We'll keep that at that. And then I spent a couple weeks afterwards like learning about Litecoin when it came out and all of this other stuff. I had a little Litecoin. I think I put $20 in when it was a couple cents or whatever it was. And then the next day I sold it because I was like, I need weeds, so I need my $20 back. Just a young, immature decision. But didn't pay attention to it for years after that. And one day while I was working at the automotive shop that I was telling you about, my buddy gives me a ring. He says, hey, why don't you come over? You want to come hang out? I was like, sure, why not? Let's do it. And I pull up. He's living in this giant mansion in Boulder. He has a giant grow house in his guest house. It's got fucking 50 weed plants in there. He shows me in. I'm like, this is really sick, bro. Congratulations. He's like, yeah, I'm selling all of it. I'm like, why? And he's like, and this was August of 2017, around there. He says, I'm going all in crypto, bro. It's the next big thing. You have to get into it. And mind you, I was like living paycheck to paycheck, barely able to even pay rent and buy food at the time. And I was like, sounds cool. I'll check it out. I go home. I'm like sitting there and I'm like, keep thinking about this crypto shit. So I make a Bittrex account. If you guys know Bittrex, it's one of the OG crypto exchanges from 2017. I think I throw $50 in, play around with it. The next day, it's like all gone, or it's not $20 or $10, And I was like, this is really interesting, and I just got hooked. I immediately got hooked. And around that same time period, I think it was like a week or two after, I got in a car accident. Totaled my car. This lady slammed on her brakes in front of me. Gone. Later to my Benz. And the insurance company sent me a fat check, like $5,000 for my car. Mind you, that was a lot of money to me at the time. Like $5,000 felt like $5 million would feel right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was I was living with $100 in my bank account at best at any point in time. So I was like, fuck yeah, I'm rich. Let's go. And I was like, let's get into this crypto shit even more. And so I just started playing around with new coins. I started to get integrated into the community. I hadn't even joined Twitter yet. I was actually only on Facebook. And on Facebook, there's like, back in 2017, there's crypto groups. And shout out Neko Z, if you guys know Neko Z on Twitter. He didn't have a Twitter either. None of us did. And he just posted in this Facebook group. He's like, hey guys, here's a Telegram chat. I'm going to talk about trading. Come join. So I click on the Telegram chat. I'm maybe the third or the fifth person in there. Looking back now, it's actually really funny because it's me, Neko Z. I don't know if you know Satoshi Flipper, but he's on Twitter. And none of us had any Twitter at all, but we were like the first 3 or 5 people in that group chat. And we're all just like, yeah, let's learn about crypto together. Let's all figure it out. And we made a couple really good trades. I put a lot of money into like a coin called Power Ledger one day. And I just remember that was the first coin that went crazy because I bought it like 80 cents and I'm up at 1 a.m. and it's hitting $1.60, $2. And I'm like, yo, this is the fucking craziest shit. I just made 100% on $200. I've got the formula. I know how to play this game. I'm going to be fucking rich in 6 months. And then I ended up proceeding to buy a bunch of rugs and losing a lot of money. But that was my introduction to crypto. That was the start of all of it. And I remember after I'd lost a good bag, I was still down bad. I'd actually left the job that I was working at because of the car accident. I just like was so into crypto and just like so kind of like unstable from the car accident and totaling my car that I just never called them. And so a week later I called them. I'm like, hey guys, like, what's up? They're like, yo, dude, we fired you a week ago, bro. You haven't shown up for 7 days. And I was like, understandable. Understandable. And so I think I was 23 or 24 at that point. I was probably, and I think I was just after I was turned 24. And I just like was beaten up. I was just like devastated. I had $1,500 left from the car, that they'd given me like $5 or $6 grand for. I'd lost all the rest of it in rugs. It was ICO rugs at the time. So I had bought a couple ICOs that just literally were rugs, like never gave you the coins. All like most of that money was zero except for the last 1,500. My rent was like, my house was pretty much done for. Like I would, like the lease period was complete. And I was in Boulder still again at that point. And I just called my mom. I'm like, yo, what's going on, Mom? And she's like, oh yeah, your dad's getting surgery. Like, how you doing? I'm like, good. Like, can I just come home and stay with you guys for a bit? I'm just like fucking not having a good time. And they're like, yeah, come home. Like, come take care of your dad. He's just going to be sitting on the couch for the next 6 months. And so I did. I went back home. I had $1,500 to my name. I put it all into crypto. And I just like made the conscious choice that instead of doing all the short-term thinking that I'd done from the time I was fucking 18 or probably even younger till 25 or 24, I just decided it's time to start thinking long-term with my life. Like, I can't continue on this path. Whether it's business, whether it's investing, whatever it is. And I sat there and I just found a whole group of people on the internet that like had a similar mentality to me and wanted to make money. And we started to flip ICOs and started to invest in new crypto coins and just nonstop every single fucking day. End of the bull market of 2017 until like halfway through 2018 into started the bear market. And that was the beginning of my crypto journey. I turned that 1,500 into like 90 G's, and had money for the first time ever. I remember my mom, shout out Mom. She's like, a lot of times she's really right on shit. She's like, hey, you got made 90 grand? I was like, yeah. She's like, don't you think you should sell that? Like, you think you should sell that? And I was like, nah, Mom.
It's going to $1 million.
Not till I have a Ferrari. That's what I told her. Not till I have a Ferrari. In hindsight, she's usually right on a lot of things. But that's when I started to become a public figure in crypto too, which was the Shillnye era.
So where did the name Shillnye come from? I mean, obviously, is it just the obvious Bill Nye and then Shillnye?
Yeah, Bill Nye the Science Guy. We were all in a group chat. I had an ICO. I had a group of guys that we would all hunt ICOs together. And one day we were just fucking around making memes, and somebody was like, yo, we should make up some funny Twitter names. Because Twitter I started to realize Twitter was where the crypto shit was at. And some guy was like, Shilliam Shatner. And some other guy's like, yo, Shill Farrell. And I was like, and then one other guy said, Shillnye the science guy. And I DM'd him like privately. I was like, hey bro, can I run with that? Like, I really like that. Because I was always into Bill Nye as a kid. He's like, yeah, go for it. So I made Shillnye the crypto guy. I had Bill Nye's profile or photo as my profile picture, but he had Bitcoin eyes and he had a big blunt hanging out of his mouth. And mind you, back then there weren't NFTs, you know, like there were, but nobody gave a fuck about CryptoPunks. Like you could probably buy, I don't know the exact number, but you probably could buy a CryptoPunk for like $50 back then.
Yeah, they were real too.
Yeah, and nobody had them as their PFP, and if they did, it wasn't anybody big or popular, so there wasn't like any awareness of that. So the thing back then was to make parodies of other people and then twist them into crypto. So I made the Shillnye account, fucked around with it for a little while, and while we were ICO hunting one day, my buddy it was 1 or 2 a.m. and he sends me an ICO. He's like, yo, look at this. I'm scrolling through it. I'm like, why are you sending me this trash? This actually looks like trash. And he's like, no, look at the designer. And the designer was like Kevin Rudolph or something, but it had a photo of Ryan Gosling as the main lead designer. And we're like, you just pulled Ryan Gosling and put him on this website and said he's Kevin Rudolph, the designer for this unique ICO? I thought it was the funniest fucking thing ever. So I tweeted it, and I was like, yo, guys, check this out. Sent this tweet. The next day I wake up, and like all the OGs had retweeted it on crypto Twitter. Like, mind you, OGs had like 30, 50,000 followers max back in the day. Like, there was nobody with 300,000 or 500,000. There was nobody even with 100,000 in crypto. There just wasn't in existence. But it got like 1,000 likes. I got like 500 to 1,000 followers. I felt the dopamine rush for the first time of like going quote unquote viral on Twitter. And I was like, yo, I kind of like this. My phone was just blowing up. Bing, 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 bing. And I was like, I bet I could be pretty good at this, you know? And that was the birth of Shillnye. That was the absolute, the initial birth. And if you weren't around back then, I used to wear a mask. I had a bandana over my face. I had sunglasses on, and I had a hoodie. And my hoodie would go down super low. and I would do what was called Periscope. Periscope is the
oh man, Periscope. That's a blast from the past. I haven't thought about Periscope in a long time.
right. So I used to do Periscope live streams. There were live streams that you could directly stream to Twitter, and I would sit on there for hours every single day. And most of the shit I was talking was fucking out my ass. I had no idea what the fuck I was talking about. You know, I was only talking about what I was observing in the moment. And I was so new to crypto. I was honestly being as honest as possible and telling people, like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just kind of sharing with you what I observe. I'm not an expert, but let me share with you my journey of learning. And I would just talk for hours. But you know how crypto Twitter is, like, with Frank with his mask, or now with ZK Shark with his mat. Like, it's an attention grabbing feature. And so as soon as people started to catch on to, like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, why the fuck is this guy wearing a mask? And why the fuck is he, like, talking on Periscope all the time and doing all this shit? I just like started to blow up. Like, I started to get a bunch of followers. People started to value my opinion for some reason. Obviously, you and I both know the dynamics. Like, when you have a lot of followers, sometimes people just automatically pedestal you and think you're right about everything and think you have the right calls, or you're a fucking genius, or you have some inside information, when the majority of the time is you're just some dude fucking sitting in his mom's house like I was, like, just talking shit on the internet, having fun. And that was the very beginning of the Shillnye journey, man. It was fun. It was really exciting, because from there I just kind of went where people invited me. You know, I started to go to crypto conferences. I started to, like, show up and meet actual people in person. I remember I was in San Francisco for a little while, and I met these two girls, Monica and Britt. Shout out to Monica and Britt if you guys are still in crypto and if you're still watching. What's up? They were super fucking cool. I thought they were the funniest people ever. We were laughing our asses off, and they're really outgoing. And they're like those kind of girls that, like, will, like, invite you and say random shit to you and not expect you to actually do it. And so one day that it was the last day of the conference, and I think Britt looks at me, or Monica looks at me, and she's like, "Hey, you want to go to Korea?" And they just start laughing, and I'm like, "Yes." I'm like, "Let's go." And they didn't expect me to say yes. So next thing you know, I'm in fucking Korea, you know. And as I was starting to broadcast all of my journeys, like, what I'm always been good at is storytelling. I'm just a good storyteller in general. I haven't always been the greatest at it, but I am, like, improving at it. And to a degree, I've always had the ability to tell a story very, very well, and tell my story very well, especially, like, in the moment, and, like, sharing what was happening for me. And that's really how Shillnye grew. Like, a lot of people remember me shilling shit coins or talking about ICOs, but in reality, the reason it grew was because I would go to conferences and I would tweet live shit that was happening at the conferences and the events. And at that time, it's a little bit different now, but at that time, there was a very large separation between people who were on crypto Twitter and people who would actually participate in real life events. Like a full separation almost. Like, you might have a crypto Twitter profile, but most of the people who, like, were living on crypto Twitter never went to an event, never even knew events existed, or would just make fun of people that were going to events. And so I kind of started to create this bridge where I would tell people about what was happening at events, how it was happening, and then started to do it worldwide, which was, like, I think one of the reasons why the account got a lot bigger.
That's sick. That's sick. So, okay, so the two people that you mentioned, the Monica and Britt, were they, like, also people who were well known on crypto Twitter?
No. Okay. They had crypto Twitter, and then as soon as, like, they started to, like, interface with me, they were like, "Oh wow, this is really important to actually do," because, like, at the time it was so different. They didn't, like, a lot of people didn't even realize that's how you had to market your product. They had a product. They were trying to make a crypto social media website or some shit, you know. And I was like, cool, this is sick, but, like, you guys just need to be on Twitter. Like, that's where the activity is, you know.
And this was, like, what, 2018, 2019, around there?
This was 2018. Yeah.
Do you remember there was a chick back then named Candace? Do you remember her?
Can his dick fit in your mouth?
Oh man, I thought I was gonna. God damn it!
Try. That was a smooth one, though, bro.
Damn.
For a split second, I thought, who's Candace? But I wasn't gonna say it.
Fuck! I thought I had you. Dude, I've been working on that.
I'll give you some props for that.
Oh my God. I thought I had that. I was feeling good. I was like, man, I've got him so perfectly set up. We're on this first name basis. I was like, Monica and Britt, he's not ready for Candace. Oh, okay. All right.
And I was deep in the story, bro.
Yeah,
if you were gonna
damn.
get me, it was there.
It was right then.
It was right there.
I knew. Okay, hey, you know, for everybody who was commenting that I had to get you with a dick joke, I tried, but you can't get him past the man. He's too good at it.
He did his best.
He's too good at it. I don't have any others lined up. I thought that was my one shot. So, okay, so how do you go from Shillnye to Fxnction? Like, where did that end up coming into place?
Man, it was a long journey. So as Shillnye, for the first maybe 8 months of being really public, I almost received no hate. It was actually incredible. Like, everyone fucking loved me. Like, it was almost like one of the most fun experiences that I'd ever fucking had too, because when I was rocking it, there was so many people that just like, you fucking rock, dude. Yeah, keep going, do your thing. It was like overwhelming. I'd created almost a echo chamber of positivity, you know. And then as 2019 started, I actually doxed Shillnye to be me, Michael, at the end of 2018, changed my name to Michael Nye and all this other stuff. And as I did that, I started to receive a lot of hate, you know, like a lot of the other people, like that were OG started to really like fucking just shit on me. And it was such an interesting contrast, because I was watching a lot of the people that really liked me turn against me because of what other people were saying. And I also experienced for the very first time, like, what Trump like names as false news, you know, like a lot of the stuff that people were talking about, while they would tell my life story, they would tell it in a very twisted and manipulated way that would make me look bad. It would make me look like terrible, you know. Like, there's like when I told you about Social Link, there was a lot of people that were like, yo, this guy fucking started this company. He's a failure. I'm like, bro, what are you talking about? Like, yes, I failed, but like, just because I started a company when I'm 18 doesn't mean I can't keep trying. And they were like trying to position me in this really like negative, dark light. And I had no idea how to deal with it. And I also think like it was partially a reflection of how I was handling the situation. So I do take ownership for it. When I put on the mask at Shillnye, like, the reason I put on the mask was to avoid and to run away from my past. I specifically didn't want anyone in the spiritual community that I told you about to know, because I just gotten out of this like deep relationship, and it was like still intense and painful, and like I was still like sewing up the scars in my heart, or sewing up the wounds in my heart, allowing them to become scars. And I didn't want anyone to know. I wanted to just do my own thing in a new world that like I could like create. And so I do now like look back, and I do really believe that if there's any elements of like yourself that's constantly trying to hide from stuff, then it's always going to be illuminated. And what I didn't realize at the time was I was still trying. I realized I was trying to hide, but I didn't realize how it was actually affecting my reality. And so I really do believe in like energetics and things like that. And as my energetic was like kind of still kind of like, you can't see me, and like, I don't want you to see me. It created the experience of the hate for me, in my opinion, you know, because to a degree I wasn't 100% being myself. Like, to a degree I was still trying to hold some sort of posture, so that the people in my past from the last relationship would look and say, oh, wow, like, Michael's good and he's doing awesome. Like, and I still had this weird aura about me. And so in 2019, when I started to get a lot of hate, I just like got it fucking big. Like, a lot of people will who were around back then I really do believe a lot of people will double down on that, and they'll say, yeah, dude, Shillnye got like some of the most hate I've ever seen on crypto Twitter. And it wasn't just once. Like, I got exposés and articles, like tweet threads written about me, completely manipulating my story and putting like me in this weird light, making me look terrible. And then they just regurgitate it every 6 months.
What were some of the common things they would say?
Like utilizing my like businesses to somehow make me look like I'm a scammer. They would what was really challenging for me was they found my Facebook profile, right? So they'd take all my old businesses and they'd be like, well, he did this, but now he moved into crypto, so he's a grifter. And I'm like, what? Like, everybody's new to crypto. What are you talking about? That makes no sense. Crypto is a brand new industry. There's all people who are trying things to come in here. And then they would take me doing spiritual shit, I'll say. And there's like a lot of photos out of me like holding sage, you know, when I was like deep in my spiritual phase, and I'd just be meditating with my sage. Or there's photos of me like hugging a tree with this one girl who I was like kind of into one time when I was a hippie. And then they'd add all these like weird shit to it. So I used to run the most famous one is my crystals. I used to run a Jedi company. That was one, or it's called Jedi Jewelry. It's a jewelry company, excuse me. And it's one of the most famous memes on crypto Twitter from 2018 to like 2020 period, because I would, long before I got into crypto, I found when I was dating that older woman, actually, we were in Mexico one time. We found a street artist who would do wire wraps with crystals, and we bought her whole supply. We thought it was fucking incredible. And so we bought her whole supply. We like supplied her family with almost a year's worth of fucking money to feed them and to like do whatever the fuck they wanted. And then we commissioned them to make more pieces as time went on. And then we'd use those pieces and we'd sell them to our spiritual community in Boulder. You know, a bunch of entrepreneurial hippies. And all the hippies, oh, this is the coolest wire wrap I've ever seen. And it was just like another attempt at me trying a business, you know, and it failed miserably, mostly because A, I just didn't have the dedication or perseverance to build anything, and also B, because I was so deep in a relationship that I had no idea how to make something else my priority back then. But then when it came back around in crypto, people would manipulate it as like this weird thing that I somehow was a bad person for doing that. They would be like, oh, well, he sells the Jedi jewelry. Like, he used to do this. How can he be in crypto now? I'm like, dude, I was making tech companies before that, like, or at least trying to. What do you mean? You know? And I never really understood it. I never really understood how the hate correlated. But then they'd also take photos. I think one of the most famous memes became me and this girl hugging a tree. And it was just a photo that was like public on my Instagram and on my Twitter or on my Facebook page. I'd never tweeted it, but it was just like something that was like public, but in my opinion, semi-private, you know, like I wasn't out there just like, yo, check out this photo. But then they'd put it into a like Photoshop, and then they would post all these words around it saying like Jedi jewelry can heal you and all of this other stuff, like as if I was trying to make a proposition that the crystals were actually like physically healing your body, you know? And I like, some people really do believe that. I've had points in my life where I was probably fucking super high and really did believe that. But I was never like really utilizing that as a marketing tactic. And they made it seem like I was, which made it like a lot of people believe that I was like intentionally trying to manipulate other people to sell jewelry. Like some people would be back in 2018 be like, dude, you're telling people you can heal their cancer with crystals. I'm like, dude, where did I ever say that? Like, where? You know, but as soon as you get into the dark side of crypto Twitter and the muck of it, people will almost twist and make up anything in order to make you look bad.
I always think too, when it comes to the internet, like, there was this website when I was in college, because I was pretty well known at Michigan State for doing a lot of events and things like that. And I was always the kind of guy that like, I was everywhere you looked at Michigan State. And so if you went to college, you know, between 2010, 2014, like in Michigan, you knew who I was. And so there was a website back then that was called like ABCD or something like that. And it was like a blog where you could just write random threads about different universities and stuff like that. And they would have topics under each university. And the number one topic at Michigan State was Marc Holzer, right? And people would say the wildest shit. And they'd take photos of me when I didn't know it. Like I'd be at the gym and there'd be like a photo of me like on like, I remember like I was sitting at a bench press and somebody was like, he doesn't even work out, he just texts. And I was like, what, am I not allowed to like text a friend while I'm sitting at the bench press? And so, but there were all these like, you know, wild things, because I lived with 3 girls my sophomore year of college, and they were like, I heard he like pays them to live with them. And I was like,
bro, what? Like where are we getting that logic? Like that doesn't make any sense. Like, no, they were 3 people that lived in my dorm my freshman year, and I lived with all athletes my freshman year, and so all the football players and basketball players lived with each other. So I was slim pickings on who I could live with. I met these 3 girls, got along really well with them and their boyfriends, and they were like, hey, we're looking for a 4th roommate, and I was like, fuck it, I'll join. Like that's how it ended up, right? But I was like, but then people start running with their own narratives and shit like that. And what I started to remind myself back then, because they would say some pretty hurtful shit. And I said to myself back then, I was like, bro, they're not going to say any of that in person. And they never did. They would always, people would tweet it. They would put it in this website. They would do all that kind of shit, but they never would say it to you in person, right? Yeah. And so it's kind of the thing I always remind myself is like, if people want to find a reason to hate you, they can. They'll take something that may actually be true about you, and they'll find their own way to spin it about you, and then they'll go and they'll run with that, and that's that, right? And and that to me is like, you know what? If they want to go do that, if that's what you find, that is a good way to occupy your time, do you? But like, I hope to God you find a better way to occupy your time at some point, because I don't think at all about what other people are doing every day. I think about myself and my actions and what I can do to better myself, better the people around me, better the people that I love, better the space that we're in, because I want to see this thrive, right? Like that's what I think about every day. If you're finding ways to take somebody's story and to twist it into, yada, 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 that's on you. But like, instead of doing that, just ask a question. Like if you have a question about somebody, just ask it. Most of the time they'll answer it, Yep. And that's always the thing about the internet. But I always remind myself of this too. There's a lot of hurt people out there that like the way they feel better about their own situation is by hurting others around them. And that's why I don't block anybody on Twitter. I've never blocked anybody on Twitter. And anytime anybody responds with some spicy shit about me or anybody I love, whatever, the way I kind of look at it is like, I'm like, hey, you know what? You're going to say what you're going to say. And like, but I feel for you because there's obviously something that you're dealing with, and this is your way of dealing with that is by lashing out at others. And I hope that whatever that wound to you is, I hope it heals at some point, and I hope that you can find a way to just be a positive person and be a brighter light. And that doesn't mean you can't give constructive criticism. I'm all about that. Like that's life. You need to do that. But there's a difference between giving constructive criticism and just being a prick, Yeah. And so I try to remind myself of that with the internet, with everything, because man, it can be a dark place as you start to gain a larger following and stuff like that, and people just feel like they can say whatever the fuck they want, and there's for a lot of times no repercussions to that, right?
Yeah, and I think when I look back at it, like it was annoying and it was frustrating, but at the same time, what I kind of look back and I see is like maybe they were just memeing as well, and I was still so insecure about myself and still kind of hurt and curled up from that last relationship that I'd been in, that I was taking it a little too personal, and so it's kind of like both sides of the coin. Because I also see it as a really big growth edge, because without them actually poking at it, I probably would have never looked back at that part of my life. I probably would have locked it in a little fucking box and said, I don't want to look at it because it's too painful. But through them kind of prodding at it, like, this gets a little deep, but like what I kind of view it as, it was almost like God being like, yo, dude, like as much as you want to like move on with your life, you still have to like resolve this. And in order for you to be the greatest version of yourself possible, you can't just cut and like lock away a part of yourself. You actually have to integrate it, which is now when like people make crystal memes and jokes and shit like that. I kind of laugh along because it is kind of funny, dude. When I was 23 and I was doing a bunch of drugs and having fucking fun and talking about healing crystals and holding them and meditating, like that is a part of my life. I do love crystals. You come to my house, there's a bunch of crystals everywhere, but it's just who I am now. So you can't really like poke and prod me as deeply anymore, which is also why I don't think it's as accentuated as it is anymore on Twitter. Somebody will throw a crystal meme out every once in a while. I'll just laugh at it and we'll have a little fun banter about it, because now I've integrated that part of my life. I know that was who I was at that time, and that was something that I needed to go through in order to experience X, Y, and Z. But when I was hiding it and not really wanting to look at it myself, it's understandable why it would trigger me so much. And it's understandable why the trolls would want to continually poke at it, because if it's triggering me, then they're getting a reaction out of me. And if they're getting a reaction out of me and they can keep getting a reaction out of me, then they're going to do it. That's what they're there for. That's what they want. So it's kind of a mix of both. Like I kind of look at it as like, yeah, it was really annoying, because part of it was I thought I found this sick community that all loved me and all thought like I was fucking awesome. And I thought I was like home, and then all of a sudden that was gone because people started hating on me. But then at the same time, I look at it, I was like, I could have never kept that like up, you know, I don't want to call it a facade because like I do believe that was like what I was presenting was a part of myself. But if you're hiding something and not integrating the other parts really well, or at least like trying to integrate the parts well, then to a degree it is a facade. And so I wouldn't have been able to keep up that face for that long without actually looking at my past and like coming to peace with it.
And I think that's one of the downsides too of not doxing, right? Like when you don't dox, I think it makes people want to find something, right? They want to find some shit about you, right? And because they're like, why aren't you doxing, right? And then I think a lot of times when somebody then does dox and there's this anticipation of it, then people are like, all right, let's find out what he's been hiding and why he's trying to not have people find out about this, right?
Yep.
And so, you know, that's kind of why, like, I mean, I've always had my username as Marc Ulcer, like outside of my AIM screen name when I was like 12, which was born to be in the NBA, which did not work out. If you can't tell, definitely not an NBA. You know, ever since then, I just went with Marc Ulcer. I was like, it's the easiest way for me to like, it's my name, you know? So I used it on Xbox. I used it on Facebook. I used it on Instagram, Twitter, you know, everything. And I was like, yeah, that's just who I am. And I think as a result of that, it's like people are like, okay, hey, you know, Google them, you know, whatever, nothing. And so it's like, but then I think when people don't dox, once again, it's that anticipation. What are they hiding? And I think that's one of the things that I would like to see with the crypto space, like how we move forward is like less of this, like the undox meta, because it's like, dude, for this space to legitimize, we can't have like the most like prominent people in the space not be doxed. Like it just doesn't make sense, right? And I think it's actually one of the times that I was the most like bullish on DeGods ever, and we'll get into NFTs in a second here, but like was when Frank was doxed, because all of a sudden it was like people saw, okay, hey, he's done this, this, and this, like that's super cool, right? And they started to support that, right? And then Kevin was doxed right afterwards, and he has a crazy background, right? A super successful background. And so, and then all of a sudden you started to see other people on crypto Twitter start to dox, and I was like, man, this is a good thing. We need this. Like, we need this for the space to move forward, because somebody who comes in from the outside and they're like, why are these crypto people always wearing some shit on their head? Like, what are you hiding? And it's like, dude, we're just not going to grow the space that way. We're not going to get all of a sudden everybody to have this like undoxed version of themselves on Twitter. It's just not going to happen, right? Yeah. So it's a good thing to move forward like that. So now, so speaking of moving forward, let's move forward from how do you go from Function or from Shillnye to Function? When did you decide to switch a name? Why did you decide to switch a name?
So there's actually a long story with that. So as soon as I got a lot of hate, I dealt with it for maybe a year and a half straight. And I was finally like, fuck this shit, you know? Like, what the fuck is going on? Like, and it wasn't even like new hate. They just kept regurgitating the same stories over and over and over and over again. And I had to keep re-explaining and keep re-explaining. It just became exhausting. It became frustrating. And honestly, it just became too much weight for me. So, like, I just sat back at the end of, or middle to end of the last bear market. And I said, fuck this, I'm out. And I started to make music. And so Shillnye just like kind of faded away. I started to like go back, because where I was in that point in time was just in a really dark place. You know, I had put a lot of time and energy into what I was building as Shillnye. I had put a lot of time and energy into crypto. I was doing the best that I could to be like as honest, transparent as possible, as well as deliver like educational information to people. Like I was just doing the best I could, and it didn't feel good not to be recognized for it. And I want to preface that because there was a lot of people that did recognize me for it. I've got shout out Ryan Calder. He was one of and still is one of my best friends. He was always there for me in all the hate, you know. Shout out Neko Z, shout out Digital Lawrence, shout out Titan. Like all these guys always had my back, but I didn't know how to deal with the hate, and I also didn't know how to focus on the positivity more than the hate. So I was just getting constantly mentally like consumed by it. And I got consumed by it to the point that I just didn't want to participate in it anymore. And I was like, fuck you guys. Like, y'all are fucking pissed off. I'd never gone through a bear market before, so I didn't also realize everybody else had all these other circumstances where they lost a ton of money and they were all in their own dark places either. I was just like, why are these people assholes to me? Fuck them. And so I quit. I just like quit as Shillnye. And I went back to what I love to do, which and one of the things that I love to do and always been a big passion of mine, which is making music. I've been a pianist since I was about 5 or 6 years old. Started freestyle rapping first year of college. Have done it for, I don't know how many years that is now, probably like 10 years, almost 12 years, just for fun. And started to go back to make a lot of music, because that was like the only thing in my life at that moment that like I could see a vision of doing. I was like, okay, if I'm gonna keep getting hate over here, I'm just gonna start like make music. I can go sit in a studio and I can build shit and create shit from my heart that I love, and I could feel the sense of being alive again. And so, yeah, I sat in the studio. I spent like 6 or 12 months, actually more like 18 months, just like building music, like with my buddy Sam, and just putting a whole bunch of stuff out there. You can listen to it on Spotify. It's under Fxnction. And yeah, just having fun again, man. You know, it reminded me why I love to be alive, you know. And it also helped me tell a lot of the parts of my story that were from the spiritual side of my life that I hadn't integrated yet. And so as I started to like share all this music, make all this music, I realized that I had like a lot of shit internally that was just like blocking me emotionally that I hadn't resolved. Still do, I'm human, but like there was a fuck ton of it that I had to get through in order to become some sort of a man in the world, become some sort of like an active participant that did like can contribute. And I spent about 6 months, 8 months making music. I spent, like I said, 12 to 18 total. But at the 6 month mark, about there, my buddy hit me up. I had met him in Korea during like Shillnye phase, and he's like, "Hey, bro, I'm building a company, and I don't know any better marketers than you. Will you join? And will you be like the head of marketing for now?" I'm like, "Sure, fuck it." I needed money. I was fucking down bad. I had no other way to pay for music. So I joined him, and we started working together, and we started grinding, and just started to follow his vision of what he wanted to do, which eventually led into NFTs. And this was early. This was like pre-hash masks NFTs. We actually know it was right around hash masks. I think hash mask minted, and we were like, "Yo, this is the fucking wave. We need to get into this." So it was like pre-Bored Apes and pre all of that stuff. And we went from like fucking around with our own NFT projects, selling them out, to starting doing celebrity projects for people. So at the time, Pokemon was really popular, and my boy Jake, shout out Crypto King, he was selling Pokemon cards to Logan Paul. And I was like best friends with Jake. We were actually about to start living together. And I call him. I'm like, "Dude, like, what if you told Logan Paul about NFTs?" He's like, "Okay, sick." So we sold a whole bunch of NFTs for Logan Paul eventually. So we worked with Logan Paul on his first NFT collection. Not Crypto Zoo, be very clear about that. I've had a couple people ask me that on my thread. I did not have anything to do with Crypto Zoo. But we sold out his first collection. His first collection was a set of like a couple thousand NFTs. They were called the Logan Paul Box Break NFTs, and he actually delivered on the utility. The whole utility on it was that if you bought one of these NFTs, he would raffle off a couple positions to come to his next live stream where he was opening Pokemon boxes, and you would get one of the packs for free.
Oh, I watched that actually.
Yeah. So we were responsible for launching that whole NFT series. I was like the marketer on it. So I helped the company with like marketing and all of that stuff at that time. And it was our first NFT drop, like big one. And then I called up my other buddy. His name's Eric. I was like, "Eric, like, we're fucking killing it over here. Like, who do you know in the celebrity realm that would want to do NFTs?" He brought us fucking Tory Lanez. We did Tory Lanez' first NFT drop. Well, it was like I think maybe even the first digital album for NFTs, especially by a major celebrity. And they went on after I left. Essentially, I got into a big scuffle with the founder who had invited me to the company. Didn't like the way he was approaching things on a relational level as well as a business level. So I quit. I'm making great money, but I was like, "Fuck this shit. I'm out." Like, I want to like. To me, like, that was a stance for me to say, like, I love you, Brandon. Like, you're a great guy. I have nothing against you as a person, but for me, like, I cannot be bought. So I just said, "Fuck it," I quit. But it was really cool because they eventually went on to do 6ix9ine. They went on to do Louis Capaldi and a bunch of other like very successful artists. And while like I know people are going to be on the stream, "Oh, those were rugs," da, 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 da. In reality, those were the things that, in my opinion, set up the ability for Bored Apes to go to $300,000. Like without that level of attention on NFTs, especially early on, there would not have been the level of excitement from the mainstream culture to even have them consider participating in NFTs. Not to say that it was my fault or anything like that, or I was not responsible for it. I'm not claiming that. But what I am saying is that it played a very large influence on getting mainstream culture excited about NFTs. And I was grateful to play an even small role in participating in that. And so I quit. And when I quit that, I didn't have Fxnction yet. I had traded some coins here and there, but I wasn't participating heavily in markets yet. I had participated in the hash masks mint and flipped those for some good money and done a couple things here and there. But I had essentially, through working for that company as well as making a couple good trades, had accumulated a decent amount of capital. And it was enough capital for me if I really wanted to. Like I had all of my spreadsheets at burn rates and how much money I had versus how much was going out every month. Like if I really wanted to, I probably could have sat there for 2 years and done fuck shit. Like absolutely nothing. But for me, that's not really who I am. I'm like a really big risk taker. That's just how I've always been. And so I was sitting on Twitter. I actually had a Solana account at the time. It was called Solana News Now or Solana Nation or something like that. It had 10K followers. So I was very early in Solana before all the NFTs started, because I was just had an account that I created to share news about Solana. Mostly so that I could just learn more about Solana. It was very interesting to me. I saw NekoZ trading it when it was $15, so I bought some, and just wanted I'm rambling, but this is a good part of the story. My buddy Cooper Turley, shout out Cooper, he's got a big Twitter account. He came over to my house in Laguna Beach one day, and he was telling me all about how he made a fuck ton of money on DeFi Summer, like a fuck ton. He's like, dude, I'm killing it. And I was like, dude, how did you know? He's like, I'll tell you one thing. I always remember what he told me. He said, I spent the year during the bear market or 2 years during the bear market, not just learning about DeFi, but studying the technology, the underlying technology underneath it and how it worked. And while he may not have understood all of it, what it did was his base understanding of it gave him the conviction to hold while the prices were going up. And so I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to do the same thing with Solana. So I looked at Solana. I was like, this looks like a cool trade. I can see people buying it for $10 and selling it for $15. That's awesome. But I'm going to learn about what the fuck proof of history is. So I started to study proof of history, and I started to study all the other blockchain, consensus mechanisms and how the blockchain actually works. And once I did that, I was like, I don't get most of it. I got a basic understanding of how it works, but I can't tell you how everything works. But it gave me enough conviction to buy into it and hold it, rather than to think of it as like a flipper and as a trader. So that's why I had a Solana account. Was I was constantly posting DeFi news. This was long before NFTs were on there, and getting into that. And when I was on Twitter one day, I saw people talking about Bored Apes and shit. And this is after they'd already minted. They were at a couple ETH floor price. I thought they were really fucking cool, and I saw the community, how it was growing. So I made a new account, because I was like, you know what, I know how the algorithm works. You need to have an account in a specific niche. If I had a Solana account, and then it all of a sudden becomes an NFT account, I'm still going to have a bunch of Solana people over here, and there weren't NFTs on Solana yet. So I just wanted a specific NFT account. So I created Fxnction. It's called a whole bunch of different names before it became Fxnction. But that was the birth. That was the actual birth of it. And I was literally only doing it to have a giveaway account and to follow Bored Apes. That was the initial purpose. And so I bought a Bored Ape one night, super fucking stoned in bed. It paid $22,000 for it or something. Woke up the next morning, was like, why the fuck did I pay $22,000 for a fucking JPEG? Are you fucking serious, dude? So I sold it for $15K or $18K or something. I lost $5K immediately, instantly. But then continued to watch it over time and continued to observe the community, PFP new ones as I bought them, and started to participate heavily. And that was kind of how Fxnction was born.
Dude, that's epic. I've always wondered kind of how Fxnction came to be, and I wasn't sure if you just literally took your Shillnye account and just changed your username to Fxnction. Okay, so
Brand new account.
July
July 2021, I think.
Damn. There we go. There we go. So, okay. So I know we could probably spend the next like 3 hours talking about like Solana and NFTs and everything like that. But I want to obviously hit the overarching points. And I feel like what we'll probably end up doing is the next time you're in LA, we'll run it back for round 2. We'll dive in deeper into everything. But I wanted to really I wanted this episode to really be like the intro years of Fxnction and like how you came to be and everybody kind of learning more of your back history and everything like that. But now getting into NFTs, what was your initial like draw to them? What made you excited about NFTs?
The community. Yeah, it was definitely the Bored Apes, because when I was watching and observing how they interfaced with each other, it was something like different that I'd ever seen. It was similar to altcoins. Like in 2017, 2018, you would have guys that were like, I'm fucking Bitcoin dude, or I'm ETH guy, or I'm this altcoin guy, you know? So there was community around it, but it was mostly just like, yo, you're attached to a bag, you know? And Bored Apes was the first thing that I was observing, because it was showing that people were actually correlating and congregating around like these pictures on the internet, and they felt like they were part of a community because of it. And not only felt like it, they were actually acting and participating as a community around it, which I thought was really unique and interesting. Like the fact that I could buy a Bored Ape and message another Bored Ape who was a photographer and be like, hey, dude, do you mind taking some photos of me? He would instantly respect me because I have a Bored Ape, and he would instantly respect, like, it almost gave you a sense of status. And because of that, I was instantly attracted to it and instantly thought this was a fucking cool social experiment that was going on. I think a lot of it was also COVID. You know, COVID was going on, so most people couldn't interact with each other in person, so they just have these communities online centered around profile pictures, and that was the fucking game. And that was like really my first interest around it.
And then how did you start like gaining a larger following? Was it, you said, because you originally created Fxnction as like a giveaway account. Was it kind of like the giveaway meta that kind of blew you guys up, or blew you up at the beginning?
No, not at all, to be honest with you. I posted maybe one giveaway from the account, actually. I was just kind of there to like retweet giveaways and participate. But as I started to get into Bored Apes and into other NFT communities, I think there was a skull one. I forgot. Craniums, Wicked Craniums. That was a really cool one to me early on. There was a lot of people centered around that. And the Great Goats, if you guys remember the Great Goats, same artist as Bored Ape Yacht Club. We're all like, yo, these goats are great. It was the fact that I started to realize that there was a part of myself that I also hadn't integrated and hadn't even really explored deeply. And I think this is where the dick jokes come in, because I started to use Fxnction, the profile, as a means of expressing a side of myself that I hadn't ever expressed before, and that I had mostly actually suppressed. A more humorous side, a more side of like the things that I thought that sometimes I'd be like, yeah, that's not socially acceptable to say in person or out loud. I started to just say them with Fxnction. And it allowed, like, Fxnction gave me this aspect of, and this capacity to no longer have to like always have a filter, which sometimes got me in trouble. But a lot of the times, I think that's why people gravitated towards it, you know? So in the very beginning of Fxnction, if you guys were there and remember, like, everyone thought because I created some random story one day, I was super stoned. I was like, I guess if I'm going to be this random dude on the internet, I'm just going to be some fucking 13-year-old boy from Alaska who smokes weed all day and has to ride his sled to go get weed every single day. And I'm going to smoke a pound of weed every day. I did smoke a lot of weed, but and so I started telling this story just because it was a funny thought that came to my head. And normally when I'm like thinking of that shit, I'm like, that's hilarious. I'm like, whatever. But at this time I was like, that's hilarious. I'm actually going to explore that. I'm actually going to see like how people would react if I told this crazy fucking story on the internet. And people loved it, you know? And then I started to make dick jokes, and I started to like, I think people still think it's real, but I made a fake photo of me talking to DJ Khaled in DMs, and I hit him with a dick joke. I really think people still think it's real, but it was fake. And I posted it, and everybody's like, oh, this is the funniest thing ever. So I started to figure out all these different dick jokes. Wilma, Candace, like, all D's nuts. You guys buying DN coin? Oh, what's DN coin? D's nuts. And during a bull run, there's so much energy and excitement that people just gravitated towards it. But what I really think they were gravitating towards was me expressing a side of myself that I had never expressed before, and the kind of energy and excitement that comes from any human that decides to kind of unveil more of themselves. And yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. I'm sure we'll get a little bit deeper into it, but that's also like what I kind of got trapped into as Function as well, which is kind of the evolution of Function 2.0. Because I've got this whole backstory of deep spirituality and caring a lot. But as I started to explore the side of myself that was like, I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm going to say whatever the fuck I want. And people loved it so much, I almost got trapped in it for a very long time. And I had to... the rebirth of Function, the integration of Michael and Function is this Function 2.0 that I talk about now. And it's really just like me saying that, yes, the dick jokes are funny. Yes, me being a dick sometimes and on the internet's funny, but that's only really a part of who I am. And without the integration of the other parts, I felt trapped. And I think anybody will feel trapped if you're just integrating one side of yourself into a public view. And naturally people just pedestal you because of like things that they like. So it's also very, very good to show the ways that you haven't been fully successful or you have failed, because we're all human. We're all trying our best. And like, I'm not fucking perfect. But when you see people talking about how they got D-Gods at 3 Sol and mutants at 3 ETH and Bored Apes at 5 ETH, you're like, oh, well, he's a fucking genius. And so, yeah, we can get into that later. But that's kind of what Function was a channel for me to explore this side of myself that I had never actually vocalized, but I could always hear in my head, or I could always feel that I wanted to say something, but I just never had the balls to say it in person until I started to explore it with Function and then started to integrate it into like who I am as Michael.
Do you feel like, because, okay, so we've gone through the various different emotions that you've gone through over the years, right, from different experiences and things like that. When you get put on a pedestal in the crypto space, right? And I think especially when I first got into NFTs, I remember I would always see, it would be like, when I thought of Function, I thought of this dude who's always going to make like the dick jokes when you're, least expecting it or whatever. He's going to hit somebody that's not expecting it, and it's going to be fucking hilarious. And I always had that in the back of my mind, but I also knew he's the guy who might put like $20,000 into this random JPEG collection, and all of a sudden like it moons and he's got 60 of them and he's doing great. And like, you always kind of looked at it of like Function, as Function moved, like the market moved, right? Yep. And in some ways that can be very fun, but in a lot of ways that can go to your head, that can cause like, I brought up to you a little bit before we started the podcast, but like, I think when people start gaining a following on social media, you try to find a way to monetize it, right? Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes people monetize it the right way, which there's no like definition of what is the right way, right? But the societal definition, some people do it the right way. Some people kind of make a decision, realize afterwards, oh, fuck, that was a wrong thing to do, but they gave me 10K and like 10K is nice, pays rent, all those sorts of things. So like, how did I guess, like, as your following started to grow, what were the positives of that? What were the negatives? What were some of the W's you had as a result? And what were some of the mistakes you had as a result?
That's a good question. I think one of the benefits of me going through all the hate that I got as Shillnye is I structured the integral sense of Function really well in the beginning. And what I mean by that is like, whether people choose to believe it or not, like I never got paid once to shill anything as Function, like ever. Now I have businesses, and that's a whole other different story. I have places you can pay me to be an advisor, an ambassador. There's different ways that you can structure it now, because we're actually building in real life businesses that have structure and are formatted well. We have a marketing agency and an advisory agency. But when like the last bull run, I never once ever took payment for anything. And I think like a lot of people like don't like to believe that, because I was just shilling a bunch of shit because I was having fun, but I was doing it because I was having fun with it, and I was doing it because I was enjoying it. And second off, I also had a very, very strong integral sense of, if I was ever going to talk about something on Twitter, I would never sell it. And not never, but I had a time period. Like there was really a realistic of 2 to 3 weeks, which is a very long time in a bull market. Things can fluctuate heavily. If I was going to post about my bags, I was never going to just instantly dump them, which I think a lot of people do, which if you choose to navigate that way, that's on you. I'm not going to say it's right or wrong. It's your choice. But for me, it just didn't feel right. So you'll remember we were talking about it earlier, the wiener dogs. I fucking swept 150 wiener dogs for about a 24 to 48 hour period. Everybody on Solana was screaming, "Show me your wiener, show me your wiener." It was the funniest thing ever. I just enjoyed that genuinely. I still have a fuck ton of wiener dogs. Actually, I might have actually burned them all because I can't sell them. But I had all of those wiener dogs for the largest majority of time. I watched them all go to zero. I had $50,000 in wiener dogs at the very top. I remember looking at the bag. I thought I was rich, but I didn't sell them. And I could have easily market dumped them on everybody while I was all hot and hype. But I just had I had a very strong integral sense that I didn't want to operate that way. And to the negative side of that, it left me in a place where I was still trying to figure out how to navigate it, because when your integrity and your reputation is directly tied to the actions you make, but the actions you make are also directly tied to the bags and the money that you're making, it becomes very confusing, as well as the fact that the actions I was making was also tied directly to the clout I had. So if I'm talking about a bag that I just bought, I know for a fact that I can I will get clout from it, especially on Solana when it's hype. You say I would say I bought 10 of these things, everybody be like, "Yo, function bot, I get a ton of followers, you get clout." But if I'm not selling it for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, most likely 80-90% of the time I would lose money on it, so I'm almost sacrificing my bag so that I can gain attention and get followers, and so that I can start to congregate a community a little bit better. And it's a positive sometimes because I have people still tell me, "Dude, I made a fucking bag off those wiener dogs. Thank you, bro." I lost from the top down $50K. For my investment, probably 5 or 10, but that's a pretty big bag to just not fucking sell. But other people are making money from it, so it's always a PvP nature. And I've always recognized that I have to operate with the highest integrity I possibly can in that PvP nature. And most of the time, you don't know what's right or wrong either. You're just trying to navigate it the best you can. So there's plenty of times on the negative side where I would be buying things and I'd be talking about them and they would be rugs. Some of them would be outright rugs, where I remember there was the pixel birds on Solana. I can't even remember their fucking names, but one day I'm driving driving to Colorado. I bought a bunch of these things. I tweeted one of them, and 2 hours later their Discord's gone, and everybody's like, "Dude, function, you motherfucker, I can't believe it. You rugged us, da-da-da-da-da." Sometimes, I call them wrong, too, when Famous Foxes came out, we got in a huge beef because some of their one-on-ones were given to influencers, and the reason why I was pissed about it was because I was about to spend $30,000 on a one-of-one that some influencer had gotten for free, and I made a whole big scene about it. It was really immature and dumb, and got in a big fight with them on Twitter about it. But now Foxy or Drax is one of my boys, and so I was completely wrong in that case and scenario. He was actually genuinely trying to build something, and I called it out incorrectly. And so it's just, I think what people don't understand is, while there are potentially, I'm not going to claim I know other people's intentions, but while there are potentially influencers with negative intentions, people that are actually out there with large followings trying to dump on their followers and trying to pump shit with their following so they can sell into it, I really think that a lot of people who gain followings gain them don't intend to gain them. You know what I mean? I don't think a lot of people are automatically I'm going to be on Twitter, I'm going to gain a lot of followers, I'm going to dump on everyone. I think a lot of it happens out of excitement and out of just nuance and all of these different things happening all at once. And when that happens and you get a lot of attention really quickly and you haven't been in a place of attention, or so much attention, it's hard to navigate things very, very, very strictly. A lot of people don't actually realize that they're making mistakes sometimes when they are in the public scene. And it only, a lot of the time, either comes through a really good mentor, somebody who's been there before and it's like, hey, G, like this is going to be looked on upon really poorly if you do it that way. But a lot of the time it's very hard to even ask for a mentor when you think you're the fucking top dog because you got 25,000 followers in a couple weeks. But then a lot of it also just comes through experience. Sometimes you just have to like take a couple L's and you have to realize like, wow, I'm like now I'm like, what, 125,000 followers. I realize I have 125,000, probably a lot less because people left in the bull market or left in the bear market. But if that number is 100% legit, like I have 125,000 eyes on me. What does that mean? That means I have 125,000 different perceptions on me. That means, one, I'm never always going to be right with everybody. Nobody's ever going to fully like me. But it also means that I have to navigate that with some sort of like strategy. Like I can't necessarily just be out there slinging every fucking JPEG I like and buying all these JPEGs and tweeting about them all the time, because whether or not I like it, personally I don't, but whether or not I like it, there's people that are pedestaling me out there that think I'm always right and will invest in the things that I talk about even if I tell them not to. And it's really interesting. It's not easy, it's not challenging, or it's not easy, it's challenging, but I'm also not complaining about it because I chose it. And it's something I created for myself. It's just a very nuanced arena that most people with like 100 or even 1,000 followers don't understand, and they just judge really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, you know, coming out of this space with zero errors is impossible, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's the thing I wish everybody understood, is that like we're all getting judged in real time by everything that we do, right? And the space moves so damn quick. So your take might be outdated 5 minutes after you put it out there, right? You might be shown that you're completely wrong within, I mean, damn near by the time the tweet goes through, right? And so with that, it's like you can just play it super safe, and some people do that, and it's totally fine. I for the most part, I play it super safe, right? I'm kind of like, I don't like making definitive takes on things, right? You know, I kind of like playing in the lane that I'm in, which is like, hey, let's have a conversation. I love this kind of shit, right? Like, this is my favorite thing. And so the you know, and that's kind of the lane that I chose. But for everybody else, it's like you got to choose the lane that you want to go into. But I think, you know, especially during this market is tough, and so people are going to make statements all the time that are like, my takes are boring, right? Because I'll be like, somebody could be like, Mark, what do you think is going to happen with Bitcoin in the future? And I would be like, well, it's probably going to have days where it goes down. It's probably going to have days where it goes up, you know, and they're going to be like, well, that's boring as shit, right? So then you got, and I get that that's a very boring take, right? But that's the take I'm going to take. And so it is what it is. And then you're going to have somebody else who's going to go, hey, Bitcoin's going to 150,000 by the end of this year, right? And what if they're proven right, then great. Like, you're going to get a ton of love. It's going to get a ton of buzz. You're going to get a fuck ton of retweets and everything like that. And then if you're wrong, you're going to get a ton of hate. Like, you're an idiot. Yeah. I put so much money into this shit. Like, are you telling me, like, I put a bunch of longs in and I just lost a fuck ton? Like, you know, and you're going to get a bunch of hate, right? And it's like, the reality of it is, though, you'd be praising that person if they were right. And at the end of the day, they know probably the same shit you do, right? Yep. And so the reality of it is, and I think it's, you know, people need to be responsible for their own actions. And I hope that's the thing that people are learning in this bear market, is nobody put a gun to your head and said, you got to mint this, you got to buy this off secondary, you got to do that. You should probably start to change your policies in terms of what you buy and what you sell and why you make those decisions, right? And that's something I had to say to myself was, hey, dude, maybe have a thesis as to why you're buying something. Maybe have a thesis as to why you're selling something. Like, but if you don't have a thesis and you're just going willy-nilly, like, you're gonna fuck yourself, right? And so, you know, I started to realize that was the way I needed to be, you know, and I needed to be responsible for my own actions, right? Because there'd be times where I would mint something and I'm like, well, why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? And I was like, okay, well, maybe why don't you ask the question before you buy that, right?
Yeah, or why are you buying it?
Yeah. And so, you know, it's like, at the end of the day, you have to be responsible for your own actions. And I hope everybody in this bear market, I hope they realize that, right? Because when we get into the next bull market, there are going to be things that fly quickly, right? But you need to be responsible again for your actions. Like, if you decide to ape in, if you decide to put everything that you have into this one project and it goes to zero, the only person you can be mad at is yourself. Like, You chose to do that, you know? I've been rugged so many times over, but the only person who forced me to buy that shit was myself, you know?
100%. And that's why I chose to navigate, especially bull run function, with a high level integrity, because I had so much attention on me that if I'm being honest, I could have made some shit project and I could have made $5, even probably 10 or $20 million by selling it out very quickly in the bull run. No questions. But what we did with Trippy Bunnies specifically was we sold out at a very low supply and a very low price during the bull market. Nobody was doing a 1 soul mint or 1.11 soul mint in the bull market. Everyone was doing 2, 3, 5 soul mints when Solana was $200, and they were all selling out. Little Uzi Verts were making $3 million and then rugging the next week. And we saw that in the ecosystem. And then we also decided it wasn't like what I did with what we did with giving away the $220,000 to charity for the first Trippy Bunny mint was very strategic. It was A, like a very good thing to do because we wanted to do it, but it was also B, very strategic because I knew and know how people interact in a bear market. I know that they get pissed. I know that they're down bad. And I know that even though the website says no roadmap, no promises, don't expect shit, people are going to still want a roadmap. They're going to want promises. They're going to still expect shit. And so we just gave away all the money to charity. We're like, we want to build an NFT project. We want to do it fucking fun. We want to do it like in an exciting way. We want to bring like some energy and some love to the ecosystem that's like constantly being drowned by scammers and by people who are only here to flip and only here to make money. Let's do something good. And it was also, on the other flip side of the coin, very strategic of us because I knew that if even we raised $200,000 in the bull market, which wasn't like realistically, that was nothing. We sold the 1,111 Trippy Bunnies in 16 seconds. Like if I wanted to sell a 10K collection of Trippy Bunnies and make 2 million or 3 million, we would have done it very easily. It would have just taken 2 minutes, you know? But we didn't do that specifically because I knew that at one point or another, people would flip and they would start to get angry and they would start to get frustrated and they would continue with the lack of responsibility they were already taking, but they wouldn't be making as much money. So they wouldn't like care as much. And so they just flip it on the influencer, whoever raised money. And we see it happening now, you know, like even fucking Frank gets fucking shit, you know, even people still call D-Gods a rug and people are still like, what's the utility of D-Gods? Bro, it's literally went from like a $200 or $300 mint to like $50 at one point or $100 at one point. It's now worth fucking 8 or 9K. Like, what are you complaining about? It's one of the top projects, but there's still people mad.
Wait, did you say 8 or 9K?
8 or 9 ETH, excuse me. Yes, yeah. 8 or 9 ETH. So 17K or whatever that is, you know? But like it's like, what are you talking about? It's one of the top projects and he still gets called a rugger. And so I think part of me in the past was trying to avoid that, where now I'm more just integrating it and just realizing, you know what, it can't be avoided. Doesn't mean that I'm going to act out of integrity. It still means I'm going to hold the same levels of integrity, but it doesn't also mean that I don't want to build anything of actual like substance and value to me or to the ecosystem. And so we're building like our marketing company, our Ratio, our marketing agency, advisory agency. We're building Sense, which is our Discord bot. And even some people are just like, oh, well, what do you do there? How do you do it? I'm like, bro, if you were like, first off, if it's a genuine question, I have no problem. Like, happy to answer it. But most of the time, it's like a subtle jab kind of question. You know, oh, you just use it to shill shit or you just use it to do this. No, we're actually building a real marketing agency that supports people. And if you would put the same level of attention that you're putting on me, on yourself, you'd probably be able to build something just as cool if you wanted to. And that's kind of like the thing I like to leave people with. It's like, why is all your attention on me?
100%.
Like, yeah, it makes me bigger. Like, thanks. Like, appreciate it. But like, why are you giving it to me that easily? You know, give it to something you want to build. Give it to something you want to create. Give it to something that means something to you and is of value to you. You'll be just as big as I am or whoever is, you know?
So here's what I want to do, because I know we only have probably next 15 minutes, because if we make this episode too long, we're going to start losing people, and I want to make sure it's great 100%. Conversation along. And like I said, we'll end up doing a round 2 of this. There's no doubt about that. But okay, so my next question for you is, you talked about 2 of the businesses that you're kind of working on right now. Can you give me a summary of currently as we speak, what are you working on, and give me like the 30-second elevator pitch for the different things that you're working on?
100%. So Ratio is a marketing advisory agency. Essentially what we do on the marketing wing is we build strategies for people for their Twitter accounts specifically. Then we actually take over and we execute on their Twitter accounts. So for example, NFT Inspect is one of our clients and has been for a while. We've been directly working with them on how do you actually how do you relaunch after they sold to a new company and were dormant for 4 months. We just essentially help them build strategies. It's with my CEO, who's Sam, who's the unhinged intern, the guy that ran the Radio Shack account 12 months ago, if you saw that. We build just unique strategies that are different, a little bit unhinged, but also fit within the scope of what you want. On the advisory side of things, I work with companies one-on-one and founders one-on-one to help them with product iterations, introductions in the industry, marketing strategies, anything that you could imagine behind the scenes to help them really understand how to navigate the ecosystem a little bit better, how to deal with FUD, all of that different stuff. And then finally, we have our SaaS product, Sense. Sense is a Discord tool, in my opinion, the ultimate marketing Discord tool. And essentially what it does is allows you to congregate a list of individuals into an SMS or Telegram list inside of your Discord and then text them immediately. So instead of tagging everyone and only having 20 to 30% see it, you can have people sign up with their SMS number, their phone number, or their Telegram. And then as soon as you have a mint going on, whitelist open, or you're live on Twitter Spaces, you just go in Discord, you type in a little message in the Sense bot, click send, and then every single one of the members that signed up get a text message about what's going on immediately.
That's very. I actually have used Sense many times, and I was a fan of it before I even knew you were involved. So, big fan of that. Love that because I can't stand Discord. So, anytime I can get a notification any other way, text, Telegram, anything like that, anything that gets me to ignore Discord, I'm all for it. So,
right.
Okay. So, dude, from here, where I want to go is. Are you currently like buying and selling projects quite a bit? And I know like people don't tweet about it as much now that they're buying because it's hard to sell when you buy something and then kind of once again you get put on this level of like now you can't sell it because people know that you own it and everything like that. So are you buying and selling a lot right now, or what are you doing mainly?
A little bit. Not really selling, more slowly and strategically buying things I like, and specifically buying into founders that I like. There's a couple projects out there that I've got my eyes on that I've like slowly been buying one or two here, or even just waiting to buy them for a little bit longer, but I know exactly which ones I'm going to snipe, that remind me of similar signs that I saw when I saw D-Gods early on, or when I saw like the MAYC or Bored Apes. Like there's social indicators that I'm always watching for and I'm always looking at when I'm on Twitter, beyond just like tweeting and making sure I have a good tweet, but like also like social indicators for my own investments. And when I see those social indicators, I make a little check in my mind and I'm like, okay, I need to relook at this thing again, or I need to go back and I need to make sure that I at least have 1 to 5 of these things, because I might be wrong, but they could pop off.
So give me a few projects, and it doesn't have to be projects that you own, but projects that you're just a fan of, whether ETH projects, Solana projects, Polygon, the whole nine. What projects are you the biggest fan of right now?
I think number 1 is Sappy Seals. Like,
love Wob.
Dude, Wob is fantastic. He's a great founder. He's really vocal. He's always really present on Twitter. That's what you need out of a founder. Not need, but it's something that's a very large indicator for me. It's something that I watched from Frank really early on, was like, even though some of his community would just shit on him really early on, he would still be there. He'd still be talking, and he wouldn't just be like a little pussy about it. That's why I like Wob. But I also really like the memeability of Sappy Seals. The social factor of it is, and it was number 3 on Inspect for a really long time, but is like, in my opinion, one of the strongest social factors. And when you like compare it to other social factors and the floor prices of other communities, it's like, it seems to me, not financial advice, it seems to me really undervalued, and I know he's got a whole bunch of stuff going on with Pixel and all this other stuff that he really wants to build and he's creating behind the scenes. So I'm a big fan of Sappy Seals. Coin wise, like I'm an advisor for Jim, so I really like Jim a lot. I think that is, you seen Jim? You know I'm talking about Roast Him Jim. I think that is super interesting. Not just one, I'm biased, I'm an advisor, but I will say, like, I like it a lot because it seems to be the very first integration of how AI and blockchain can tie together, and in a social factor. to me, that's really interesting. As soon as this AI shit came out and started popping all over and everybody's using Midjourney, I was like, this is going to be huge in the next bull run. I don't know how, but it's going to be fucking massive. And the way that Jim is tying the AI into social integration and social community and humor, and tying it with their token and having all of the stuff together, it really just reminds me of something that like has a lot of potential. I'm going to name two more. Harry Potter, Obama, Sonic, 10 Inu coin. It's the most ravenous community I've ever seen in my life.
It is.
I don't even own any right now. Full transparency. I don't even own any. But like, I just cannot believe how ravenous they are and how good they are at the social memeability. And they're kind of like the outlier of it, like, or the outlaw. They're kind of like the reject, you know, like some people really get the humor, you know, some people don't get it at all. They're like, what the fuck is this guy doing dressed up as a Sonic running around the street screaming, so Harry Potter, Obama, Sonic, 10 Inu, you know? But I as soon as I saw the community making videos and all the AI memes and all the crazy shit they're doing, I was like, this is so fucking unique and different. And that's what I look for in investments. And then I'm going to give a shout out to my man, Jay Croft, because I really fuck with this kid. This kid made a project called Mindful Monks. Disclaimer, I do own some, and not financial advice. But what I really like about Jay was he called me about six or 8 weeks ago. Hadn't even minted yet, hadn't started to mint. He said, I have this collection. I want to launch it on Ethereum. I want it to be a collection focused on mindfulness and doing really, really like a lot of good things in the world. I'm a one-man team. I have no idea how to sell this collection out. Can you help me? And quite frankly, I don't like shill shit. Like, you're never going to see me say, go buy this right now on the Fxnction account. You're just not going to see it. It's not what I do. The only way I could like really help him was giving him some just words of encouragement and words of advice, you know? And as I talked to him a little bit, if I'm being fully transparent, I got off the first phone call with him and I was like, this kid's got a good heart. He's smart, but this shit is not selling out. Like, good fucking luck. And not to be a dick about that, Jay, but it was just like, you're a one-man team. You're in crypto. You're in the middle of a bear market. Like, let's be real. Like, most projects that try to do that are complete failures. And they try for a week or two. Maybe they sell a couple, then they close mint. This kid has been grinding for the last 8 weeks. For the first 6 weeks straight, he was selling maybe 10 or 20 a day, you know, not much, but enough. And he'd message me. He'd be like, dude, I sold 20 today, bro. I'm like, congrats, man. Good fucking shit. Keep it going. Next day, he's like, yo, I sold 30, dude. Congrats, bro. That's fucking awesome. Keep it up. Over 6 weeks, he sold 3,000 of his 6,000 collection. In the next 6 days, he sold the other 3,000. And that was really impressive to me, because when I see most founders, especially in a bear market, being like, I'm going to launch an NFT and I'm going to sell it out, they quit after week 1 or week 2 when it's not sold out. Some have even quit after day 3. They're just like, yo, dude, fucking this market's rough. I'm going to just pause the mint and I'm just going to relaunch it, or I'm going to cut supply, or I'm going to cut mint price. We saw that with Ether recently. They're just like all over the place. They don't know what to do. This kid was like, I don't care how long it takes. I'm going to sit here, I'm going to stick it out, and I'm going to fucking grind. And I really want this project not just to be me making a bunch of money, but I want to do a lot of good in the world, and I want to build a big community. And I jump on a Twitter space one day, there's 100 fucking people in there. It's more than I have in Twitter spaces. And he's just jamming with a whole bunch of people who are all of Mindful Monk PFPs. And it just reminded me of a really organic start to a community. I won't compare it to anything, but it just reminded me of a very organic start to a community. And I like to see that. I like to see when founders are so dedicated to their vision that they just don't give a fuck how long it takes to sell out, or they just don't give a fuck how long it takes to build something. That's really, really fucking special. So shout out Jay, like, not financial advice, but I really fuck with those guys too.
Yeah, no, Jay's a boy. So he's one of my good homies, and I love Jay. He's just a genuine good dude. and I always loved that guy. And same thing, I got to see the experience from the outside of getting to see him, grinding through, getting the mints out there, and getting people to join the community. And Jay's always been nothing but spreading love and positivity, which I definitely think we need far more of on the timeline. So
100%.
I always love that. I love his mindset. I love him as a person. I've gotten to know him over the last year and just genuinely thoroughly enjoy him. So I'm always rooting for a project like that, because we need more people like that. Somebody who is not at all here for the money or anything like that. He's truly here for the great vibes and bringing good energy and like doing something positive for the world. And as you know, some people can look at that and say, oh, that's, virtue signaling, or it's like too, whatever, yada, yada, yada. No, we need that. Like, this world, life is fucking hard, man. We need more people who bring love and just good vibes to the timeline. And that's Jay, and that's what he's trying to do. And I love that. So I'm all for that. So.
Same.
But okay, so to wrap it up, man, here's what I want to do, and I got to make sure I got to go through actually all my questions to just make sure I didn't miss out on any bangers here. But
Please.
so let me give a double check, just make sure there's nothing I'm missing here. I still have plenty of questions that I could ask you, but we'll run it back round 2 at some point. I know people are gonna want that. Let's say this. So let's go with where do you see yourself going? Like, what, in a perfect world, you could have launched a project at some point that you said, hey, I'm going to be the face of this project. I'm going to do a 10,000 collection. I'm going to do a 5 soul mint. People would have easily minted that. Mm-hmm. Where do you see Fxnction going? Do you see yourself kind of, playing in the lane that you're in right now and just kind of maintaining that for a while? Or like, especially realistically, probably got another year and a half until the next bull market starts. Where do you see yourself fitting into the ecosystem as time goes on?
I want to contribute a perspective, because I think a lot of the time there's a lot of perspective that's lacked. We call things rugs, or call people grifters or scammers, when in reality some people might be, but a lot of people are really just trying, and some of them might be failing, but that's part of the game. So I'd like to contribute perspective, and then I'd like to continue to actually build real things. I think that's the difference from where I was last bull market to where I am now, is that previously I was very, very focused on just making good flips, making good trades, and like making funny jokes on the internet. And getting attention from that. And I think I have a lot more perspective to how the attention on me is, like the level of attention that can be on me and sometimes is on me. And I want to treat it with a lot more respect. What I mean by that is I want to promote a lot more positivity. I want to like promote a lot more of reality and truth, and still be fun and still hit some dick jokes around there. But in reality, it's not sustainable for most people to be a trader, So what I'm doing mostly is restructuring my life in a way where I can actually build businesses, where I can actually have skills, where I can actually learn to be, for right now, I'm COO of Ratio, so I'm head of operations. Like, I can actually learn what that actually means. I can actually integrate and create skill sets and learn new skill sets and become a more structured human. A lot of my time right now while I'm working is focused on working out and physical fitness, because I realized I was really lacking that in the last bull market, and probably contributed a lot to my inability to keep a clear head, And I also want to keep a little bit of rationale in there too, because I really do believe there will be another time where either A or B, but really either A, Fxnction's massive attention is back. Not to say that I don't have attention now, but people are buying shit that I'm buying, and I'm tweeting and having a fun time. I want to treat that with a high level of responsibility and integrity. I believe I always have, but I would like to do it even greater, if possible. And then I'd also like to promote things that are actually more than just my pinned tweet for a really long time. I like to trade, or I like to smoke weed, trade, and trade NFTs and fuck. And it's super simple. It's true, I do like those things, but I like a lot of other things too. I like to hang out with my friends. I like to lift weights now. I like to take care of my body, make sure good food's going in it. I want to make sure I have a clear mentality. And I want to make sure that I'm actually a contributor to the industry beyond just jokes and memes and fun stuff. And so that would be really where I see myself going in crypto moving forward, is a more structured and whole and integrated individual.
There we go, man. I love to hear that. So, okay, I want to give you one opportunity to wrap this up. If let's say somebody's watched this, and let's say there's a project that you talked about once and it rugged and they lost some money on it, or a project that maybe you advised and they didn't end up being as great as you thought they might be. If somebody's watching this and they're like, I fucking hate this Fxnction, dude. I've lost money and I blame him for it. I want to give you an opportunity to talk to those people. Why should they be bullish on the future of Fxnction, and why should they, believe in you?
You shouldn't be if you don't want to be, you know. I'm a human. I'm doing my best just like everybody else is. If you did buy something that I tweeted about and it rugged, I'm sorry. They rugged me too. Not that that's an excuse. It's not, but like I do apologize. It's also part of the game. And like on the other flip side of the coin, it's a lesson, you know. I think one of the things that I've done really, like, as best as I can after, like, I think I've done it really well. I'll say that. I think I've done it really well is I've taken personal responsibility, like, pretty damn well, especially in crypto. What I mean by that is, like, there's been tons of projects that have fucking rugged me. I don't think I've ever really once gone on the timeline and been like, this project rugged me. No, I'd like sit there and I just take personal responsibility for it, and I move on. I mean, I was hacked for over $500,000 in this bear market, which was a large, if not all, like a large majority of my funds. And never once did you see me go on the timeline and complain about it. Every single time you did see me talking about it, I was taking full responsibility for it. And I was saying this happened to me, and I am also responsible for not keeping my funds as secure as I could be, not keeping my computer as secure as I could be, or my passwords, or whatever the fuck happened, right? And so I think, like, beyond the basic apology of like, yep, sorry, and it's part of the game, but B, in reality, I think everybody needs to take a deeper level of responsibility, because I constantly see people blaming either influencers or founders, or just blaming the, like, overall concept of ruggers. Welcome to the fucking game, bro. Like, you chose to be here. You're choosing to continue to play it. If you haven't realized that sometimes there are bad actors, or sometimes good actors just make mistakes, then welcome to the fucking game. You need to realize that as soon as you fucking possibly can, and you need to take as much responsibility for it as you can, because otherwise you're going to stay broke. It's just a fact. There's not a single person out there who has continued to blame people for their actions that is rich. Not a single person. I can't name one. And it's harsh, it's direct, but in reality, it's also very true, because the more that you continue to complain and disperse responsibility, the more you completely disconnect yourself from the fact that you took the actual action. And if you can't connect with the fact that you took the actual action, how are you going to improve upon that action?
Yeah, I mean, facts. Drop the mic on that. Okay, one last question, because I forgot that we didn't bring this up. So, okay, so you had your wallet drained. You lost $500,000. Walk me through, do you know what happened? And then also, what was it like seeing kind of the community rally together and start to raise some of that money back for you? I know it's obviously impossible to kind of completely make that whole, but what was it like to see people rally around you after that?
It was special. So the first hack was for $250,000. I had just sold all of my DGods, like I was telling you earlier. My buddy had asked me for help to put a down deposit on a community house that we all share. I don't live there, but we share it, and we're always there, spending a lot of time. And he's like one of my very, very good friends. And of course, I had no question around it. I said, yes, I'll figure out how to make the money. Really, one of my last assets was my DGods. Sold all my DGods. Had about 249,000 SOL. Or $249,000 in SOL when SOL was like $100 sitting in my wallet, and woke up one morning and was drained. And not like it just literally, the only thing I remember is I woke up, looked at my phone. The only notification I had was you sent all of this SOL, 500 SOL to someone. If I'm being honest, I still have no idea how it happened. I think my computer might have been remote accessed. I don't keep any of my seed phrases digitally ever, anywhere. They're always written down, and they're always in special locations physically. They were all still there. It's the only thing I can think of. I still don't know. The second hack was Not to say that the first hack wasn't my fault, but the second hack was even more my fault. It was just like me being kind of ignorant and stupid. We were working with a Solana developer to build a tic-tac-toe game on Solana. We were going to make some fun shit and just like fuck around. We're just testing ideas. And one day when we were testing it, I connected my main wallet instead of my burner wallet, just high and out of stupidity. I also wrote my name in on the internet as Fxnction, which was probably pretty fucking stupid considering I had a lot of attention on me in the Solana space then. And if anybody was like relatively active on Twitter, they knew that I would just tweet a bunch of NFTs and kind of like be a dumbass and brag about how much money I had by showing how many NFTs I had. And so when that happened, he's like, I was like, the game isn't working, bro. Something's wrong. He's like, oh, just approve the transactions. And I was just stoned. I was just clicking approve. But like when I was clicking approve, he was stealing all my NFTs, all my OK Bears, all the super rare ones I had, all the like 55 primates, like all of this shit, bunch of stuff. So that super sucked. And if I'm being honest, it was really hard for me to actually accept help like right afterwards. I'm one of those guys that like sometimes and a lot of the times thinks I have to do it all on my own. It's kind of a pride factor that I'm still working on in myself. But like for a lot of the times, like even primates reached out, a couple other people like, yo, let me just send you NFTs, bro. Let me just get you. I was like, no, I'm going to be okay. I got it. But in reality, it felt really, really good to have like the community rally around me. Zach XBT tracked the funds for completely free, like did all this stuff. He actually helped me get 50K back, which was awesome. I gave him a big donation of that. So it felt good to have like a large group of people around me. I wish I had been a little bit more open to the actual like receiving of the support, but it did show me that I had like a group of people that gave a fuck about me and didn't want to see me like beaten down or destroyed by it. So it meant a lot.
There we go, man. Well, hey, that's a beautiful moment to end it on of not you getting rugged, but the people rallying around you and supporting you. And there's a lot of people who love and appreciate you, dude. You've made a lot of people laugh on the timeline. You've brought excitement to the space, and so you know, whether people love you or hate you or anything like that, man. If they hate you, it's misguided. They just it is what it is. And the people who love you, man, you've brought a lot of fun to the timeline, and that's what we're here for, man. That's the difference between this and crypto. It's like crypto is not as exciting. This is fun. You know, It's the wild, wild west. It's fun. That means there's going to be good days. That means there's going to be bad days. And the people who bring fun to the timeline, man, appreciate those people, because when those people are gone, it's real boring.
100%.
So, dude, appreciate you. I would say drop your socials, but people know where to find you. And it's in the description anyway. But, dude, I appreciate you coming on, and I'm excited to see everything that you do next. And I know we'll run this back at some point. But hey, we got a brewery to go to tonight. We're going to go meet some Web3 degens, have some beers, and eat some burgers and shit like that. So we got to get going. But, dude, appreciate you, and we'll run this back soon.
Definitely, bro. I want to also say thank you to you, because this podcast has been really fun, and I don't think I've ever been able to tell that depth or majority of my story in length. And every time I tell my story a little bit deeper, it helps me organize it. So I want to say thank you to you for inviting me here and for hosting me, and for sharing, allowing me the platform to share my story.
Well, hey, appreciate you, brother. This was fun. So I appreciate you doing this, and glad I could help to tell the story, and looking forward to hearing what people have to say about it. But for everybody else, appreciate you tuning in. This has been a long podcast. I think my foot fell asleep at some point. I'm sure yours did too. But man, appreciate this. Appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'll chat with you guys soon.
Sounds good.
See you guys.
Peace.